Chapter 1. The umbrella that made a wall February in New York has a special way of reminding you that civilization is only a polite agreement. The wind comes slantwise between the buildings, finds the soft spots in your coat, and works on you like a pickpocket with a grudge. I had the collar up and my hands in my pockets when the taxi dropped us at Cara Doyle's townhouse on East 73rd, where money was being converted into virtue at a winter fundraiser for the City Library Foundation. There were strings of white lights in the front windows, tasteful and expensive, and the steps were scrubbed clean as if the stone had never known a boot heel. Inside, the air smelled of wax, flowers, and the sort of food that has been ordered rather than made. A man in a black suit, hired to look as if he belonged there, took our coats with the careful expression of someone handling artifacts. Then I saw the umbrella. It stood open in the entryway, planted like a small tent. Black and glossy, its ribs stretched wide and steady indoors, in a room with polished wood and bright lamps, and a tray of little pastries that looked like they had been designed by an architect. The umbrella was a deliberate insult to the place, and what was worse, nobody seemed to notice it, or if they did, they treated it as an eccentric guest who had paid for the right to be odd. I stopped short. Nero Wolfe came in behind me, filled the doorway, the way a piano fills a room, and when he saw me halted, he halted too. That alone made a small event. Wolfe did not halt for furniture, and he did not halt for people, unless he intended to make them feel their size. His eyes went to the umbrella and stayed there. The butler type, whose name I didn't know and didn't care about, said, "Good evening, Mr. Wolfe, Mr. Goodwin. Miss Doyle is in the parlor. May I take your coats?" "I am wearing my coat," Wolfe said, and it wasn't a quibble, it was a pronouncement. Then he stepped around the umbrella with care, as if it might bite. I stepped around it too, and as I did, I saw what it did. From the parlor doorway, you could see a neat line across the entry. Coat rack on the right, mirror on the left, and between them the usual flow of people. But the umbrella had been placed so it blocked a clean sight line from the parlor to the coat rack. It didn't block movement, it blocked vision. It created a pocket, an unseen corner in a public room, and it did it without a wall. Wolfe's lips tightened. That was his version of a whistle. "Umbrellas do not open themselves," he murmured, low enough that only I heard. "And people do not make mistakes that convenient." He was right about mistakes. If there is one thing I've learned from watching Nero Wolfe, it's that human carelessness has a pattern. Real carelessness is sloppy. It leaves smears. This umbrella was centered, steady and angled, so it made exactly the blind spot a man would want if he intended to do something in the entryway, while a roomful of people drank and laughed 10 feet away. "Cara Doyle," the butler said again, a shade sharper. He was one of those men who can be trained to remain calm while a chandelier falls, but who can't stand a guest who refuses to follow the script. Wolfe handed me his hat with the dignity of a monarch handing off a crown. I took it because I always do. I let the butler peel Wolfe's coat off him, because if Wolfe didn't remove it, he would eventually melt the crowd with the heat of his disapproval. Then we went forward into the parlor. Cara Doyle was a handsome woman in her 30s with hair, the color of good mahogany, and eyes that did not like surprises. Her townhouse told you she was successful. Her smile told you she was tired of being successful in public. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, and the smile widened, and the tiredness got pushed behind it like a chair shoved into a corner. "I didn't think you would actually come." "I did not come," Wolfe said. "I was brought." She blinked, then laughed, and the laugh came out a touch too high. "Well, I am grateful to whoever managed it, Archie. Hello, you look like you would rather be at home." "I would," I said. "But I've been told that doing good for a good cause builds character, and I'm due." A man near her, slim and grey-haired, watched Wolfe with a kind of cautious admiration. He had the look of someone who writes checks the way other men shake hands. Cara touched his arm. "This is Bradford Vale," she said. "He is on the board of the City Library Foundation. Brad, this is Nero Wolfe." Vale's hand came out. Wolfe looked at it as if it were an invitation to eat without washing first. "I do not shake hands," Wolfe said. Vale withdrew his hand without changing expression. that told me he was used to being refused things, which is rare for a man like that, or else he was too polite to show the irritation, Kara said quickly. Of course, I told them you had your ways. Indeed, Wolfe said. His eyes were not on Kara or Vale. They were flicking to the doorway behind us, to the entryway, and I knew he was thinking about the umbrella, as if it were a sentence in a letter that didn't belong. The parlor was full, about 50 people, dressed to fight off the winter and show off their money. A string quartet played in the corner. They were good, which meant someone had paid for them to be good. There were trays of food held by young men in black, and glasses of pale wine and amber liquor. The room had a fireplace, with flames that were decorative, not necessary. Everything about the evening said comfort, charity, and control. Then the umbrella said someone had brought in the opposite. Kara took us through introductions. There was an attorney, Martin Pell, with a face that looked like it had been drafted to argue. There was a banker, Mrs. Edna Rusk, whose smile had the brittle shine of a pearl. There was a young man named Julian Fife who was handsome in a careless way that had probably been expensive to develop. There was a woman named Celeste Marrow who did public relations and looked like she could sell a fire to a fish. There was also a thin fellow in a sweater under his jacket. A man who didn't match the others. Kara said his name was Leon Hartman. He runs the library's community outreach, she told Wolfe. He's the one who actually runs the programs. Hartman's smile was real, which made it stand out like a stain. Mr. Wolfe, it's an honor. Wolfe inclined his head. That was a generous gesture for him at a party. I am told your work is necessary. That does not make it pleasant. Hartman blinked, then grinned. No, sir, it doesn't. While Kara was busy circulating Wolfe through the room like a celebrity who might attract larger donations, I drifted, which is my job. Wolfe does the thinking, and I do the seeing. It's not official, but it's the truth. I moved back toward the entryway, under the pretense of getting a drink. The umbrella was still there, open, steady, pretending it belonged. People flowed around it without comment. A woman in a fur-trimmed coat nearly tripped on the edge of it and recovered with a little squeal, then laughed, as if that was charming. A man in a tuxedo glanced down at it, frowned, then kept going. No one closed it. I caught the butler type, who was actually more of a head man, and asked him, "Whose umbrella is that?" His face tightened. Some guest left it open. "That happens," I said. "But not like that. Didn't you close it?" He gave me the look of a man who has been told not to touch something. Miss Doyle said to leave it. She said the owner would come for it. That was interesting. Kara Doyle had noticed it. Kara Doyle had told her staff to leave it. Either she was being polite or she had been spooked. I filed it. Behind the umbrella, just beyond the blind spot it created, was the coat rack. It was crowded with winter coats, scarves, hats. A shallow table beneath it held gloves and a couple of handbags, and a silver bowl for keys. A mirror on the opposite wall reflected the entry, but the umbrella's canopy interrupted the view, making a wedge of darkness where the mirror should have shown detail. I stepped into the pocket created by the umbrella, and instantly, it felt like being behind a curtain. I could see the parlor, hear the music, smell the food, but I was hidden from anyone standing in the doorway. It was the kind of place a man could slip his hand into a coat pocket, drop something into a handbag, or take something out of a silver bowl, and no one would see unless they were looking directly. I had just decided that I wanted to see who had been looking directly when a voice behind me said, "Archie." It was Wolfe. He had detached himself from Kara. That was another event. Wolfe doesn't roam at parties unless there is a reason. He stood at the parlor threshold, his bulk framed by the doorway, and his eyes were on me and the umbrella. He didn't step into the entryway, not yet. He held the line like a general. "Find out whose umbrella that is," he said quietly. "That's what I'm working on," I said. Kara told her staff not to touch it. His brows lifted. "Did she? That is useful. Come here." He stepped into the entryway, and the air around him seemed to adjust to accommodate his certainty. He leaned, not bent, leaned, and looked down the line the umbrella blocked, then up at the mirror, then back at the umbrella again. This placement, he said, is not careless. I noticed. He made a small sound that could have been approval or indigestion. A device, a barrier made of etiquette. No one will close it because no one wishes to appear rude, and no one will move it because it belongs to no one, which makes it belong to everyone, which makes it belong to everyone, which makes it dangerous, I said. That's a long way to say it's a trick. A trick, Wolfe said, is often a confession. The question is, what is being confessed? Theft, concealment, a message, perhaps a weapon. A weapon at a fundraiser, I said. That's festive. Wolfe's eyes moved past me to the coat rack. Tell me what you see. I looked: coats, scarves, gloves. A black velvet wrap with a brooch pinned at the collar. A man's overcoat with a leather wallet peeking from the breast pocket. A handbag with a gold clasp. Ordinary temptations for an ordinary thief. Then I saw what wasn't ordinary. On the table beneath the rack, partly hidden by a scarf, was a small velvet case. The kind jewelry comes in. It was open, empty. I pointed. That. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Whose? No idea, I said. But somebody left it open. Wolfe's lips pressed together again. An open umbrella and an open jewelry case. This is not an evening. It is a display. You want me to ask around, I said. I want you to observe, Wolfe said. Asking around is a form of begging. Begin with observation. That's Wolfe. He could make a lecture out of ordering breakfast. Still, I did as told. I stepped back into the parlor and let the party swallow me. I got a glass of something pale and harmless and drifted near Kara, who was speaking to Mrs. Edna Rusk. Mrs. Rusk was saying, "The library is admirable, Kara, but I do hope they have proper oversight. One hears such things." Kara's smile held. "We have audited statements, Edna." Mrs. Rusk's eyes flicked toward Wolfe in the entryway. "Of course. And I suppose Mr. Wolfe is here to audit your guests." Kara laughed too quickly. "He is here as a guest, like everyone else." Wolfe entered the room then, and the temperature of the conversation dropped. He moved to a chair near the fireplace and sat. Not because he was tired, but because sitting is Wolfe's natural posture in any place that is not a dining table. He looked like a man who had decided to allow the room to exist around him. Kara excused herself from Mrs. Rusk and came to Wolfe. "Everything all right?" "No," Wolfe said. Her smile faltered. "What? What is wrong?" Wolfe's eyes met hers. "You have an open umbrella in your entryway. You have an empty jewelry case beneath your coat rack. Your staff has been instructed not to touch the umbrella. Your guests are drinking. Your quartet is playing. You are smiling. This combination is not normal." Kara's cheeks flushed. "The umbrella is nothing. A guest, someone careless. The case, I don't know. It could be anything. I told them not to touch the umbrella because the owner might be offended." Wolfe's voice stayed calm. "You have already been offended. The question is whether you will admit it." Kara swallowed. Her eyes darted toward the entryway. Then back. "Archie, can we talk?" I nodded, and we moved a few steps away, toward the side of the room where a pair of tall plants pretended to provide privacy. She kept her voice low. "I did notice the umbrella. It appeared about 20 minutes ago. I asked Charles, the head man, to close it. He said he didn't know whose it was. I told him to leave it because I didn't want a scene, that's all." "What about the jewelry case?" I asked. Her eyes tightened. "I don't know whose that is either. This is a fundraiser, Archie. People bring expensive things, they set them down. They forget them. It happens." "It happens," I said. "And then it turns into trouble. Has anything gone missing?" She hesitated. "Not that I know," Wolfe's voice behind us said. "You know more than you are saying." Wolfe looked at her the way he looks at a man who insists the sun is green. "Miss Doyle, I am not here to enjoy your quartet. I am here because you called me this afternoon and said you had a problem that might become public. You did not mention an umbrella." Kara's eyes widened. "I did not call you." Wolfe's brows rose. That was as close as he gets to surprise. He turned his head slightly toward me. I saw the flicker in his eyes. That was the moment when the umbrella stopped being a clue and became a doorway. I said, "You didn't call him, then who did?" Kara's mouth opened, then closed. She looked frightened now, and her Polish couldn't hide it. "I don't know," she said. "I didn't, I swear." Wolfe's voice became even gentler, which is a bad sign for whoever is on the other end of it. "Then someone has brought me here under false pretenses. That implies intent, and the umbrella implies design. Therefore, your evening has been invaded." Kara's fingers twisted together. "What do we do?" Wolfe looked around the room. People laughed, clinked glasses, leaned close to flirt or negotiate. The quartet played something bright. No one was paying attention to the fact that Nero Wolfe's face had turned into a judge's. "We do nothing," Wolfe said, "until we must." That was Wolfe's version of action. The man can sit still like a rock and make it feel like strategy. I said, "At least let me find out who brought the umbrella." "Proceed," Wolfe said. I did. The only way you can at a party like that, by pretending you belong everywhere. I started with Charles, the head man. He met me near the tray of drinks. "Mr. Goodwin." "Charles," I said, "that umbrella, any idea?" His expression was stiff. "Number, it was not there at the start. I saw it open when I returned from the kitchen. I assumed a guest. Miss Doyle told me to leave it." "Did you see anyone carrying it?" I asked. He shook his head, numbered. "Did anyone come in without checking a coat?" I asked. "Several," he said, and his tone said that wealthy people do what they like. I moved on. Near the entryway, Julian Fife was talking to Celeste Marrow, and he had one hand in his pocket and a grin that could have been rented. I stepped in. "Julian, you look like a man who has opinions about umbrellas." He laughed. "Only in the rain." "There's one open indoors," I said. "You notice it." He shrugged. "Sure, odd people do odd things when they've had 2 drinks and think it's charming." "Did you see who did it?" I asked. He shook his head. "Number I came in, it was there. I thought it was some kind of modern art. Kara is fancy." Celeste Marrow's eyes were sharp. "It is not modern art. Kara would never." "Then who would?" I said. Celeste's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Someone who wants attention." "That umbrella has attention," I said. "It also blocks the view of the coat rack. Convenient." Julian blinked. Celeste's expression went still. "That's a nasty thought," she said. "Nasty thoughts are my specialty," I told her. "Did you lose anything? See anyone near the rack?" Celeste's hand went to her purse. "Number and I saw no one. This party has staff." "It has staff with eyes," I said. "It also has guests with hands." I left them and moved toward Bradford Vale. He was speaking with Leon Hartman, and their posture suggested a disagreement disguised as discussion. Vale's face was polite. Hartman's face was not. As I approached, I heard Hartman say, "You can't buy your way out of it." Vale replied, "I can pay for solutions." Hartman's eyes cut toward me. Vale's followed, and his mouth tightened slightly, as if I had interrupted a calculation. "Mr. Goodwin," Vale said, "are you enjoying yourself?" "Immensely," I said. "I like parties where the umbrellas are inside." Hartman frowned. "Umbrellas?" "There's one open in the entryway," I said. "You didn't put it there, did you?" Hartman stared at me as if deciding whether I was joking. "Number why would I?" "Good," I said. "Because if you did, you picked a fine spot. It blocks the view of the coat rack." Vale's eyes sharpened. "Is that so?" "It is," I said. "And under the rack is an empty jewelry case. That makes the umbrella look less like a joke and more like a plan." Hartman's face tightened. "Somebody stole something." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe someone wanted to." Vale's voice was careful. "You should tell Kara." "Kara says she knows nothing," I said, which puts her in the category of either honest or frightened. Hartman's jaw worked. "This is not the time." "Crimes are rarely considerate," I told him. Vale leaned slightly toward me. "If a theft has occurred, it should be handled quietly. This is a charitable event." "Charity doesn't stop hands," I said. He didn't like that, but he didn't argue. He was a man used to having the rules arranged around him. Wolfe had already rearranged the room simply by sitting in it. I was about to move away when a commotion started near the fireplace. A woman's voice rose, sharp. My necklace, it was here. The quartet stumbled, recovered, heads turned. A circle formed. I pushed through, because that's what you do when trouble happens, and you have a talent for making it worse. Mrs. Edna Rusk stood with her hand at her throat, and her face was white under her makeup. Her pearls were gone, not ordinary pearls either. The clasp had been heavy, and the strand had sat on her neck like a claim. I wore it, she said, her voice trembling with fury. I took it off for a moment because it was too warm, and I put it in my bag, and now it is gone. Cara Doyle stepped forward, her smile gone entirely. Edna, please, are you sure? The lining gaped. No necklace. Only a small velvet case, open, empty. My eyes went to Wolfe. He had not moved from his chair. His eyes were on the case, and then, slowly, they shifted toward the entryway. He spoke, quietly, and the people nearest heard it, and went silent, and the silence spread. You see, Wolfe said, the umbrella did not build itself, and the corner it made has now become a room. Mrs. Rusk's voice cracked. Are you saying someone stole it here, in this house? Wolfe's gaze went to Cara. Miss Doyle, will you now tell me who invited me? Cara's face was strained. I told you I didn't. Wolfe nodded once as if confirming a theorem. Then he looked at me. Archie, he said, close the umbrella. That was a simple order, but the way he said it made it sound like a verdict. I went to the entryway, stepped into the pocket of hidden space, and put my hand on the umbrella's handle. For a moment, I hesitated. It had stood there like a challenge. Closing it felt like stepping into someone else's intention. Then I snapped it shut. The sound was small, but in the hush behind me it landed like a door slamming. As the canopy folded, something clinked softly on the floor. A thin object had been wedged into the umbrella's ribs, hidden by the fabric. When the ribs collapsed, it fell free and skittered on the polished wood. I bent and picked it up. It was a key, not a house key. A small brass key with a number stamped on it. The kind you get for a lockbox, a storage bin, or a private drawer. I bent it up. The room behind me seemed to lean forward. Wolfe's voice came, calm as ever. What is it? A key, I said. And it was hiding in the umbrella. Mrs. Rusk made a sound that wasn't a word. Cara's hand went to her mouth. Wolfe's eyes narrowed, satisfied in a cold way. Then the umbrella was not merely a wall, it was a container. I looked at the key again. The number on it was clear. I had no idea what it opened yet, but I knew something else. Whoever planted that umbrella had not done it for a laugh. They had done it to create a space where objects could move without eyes following. They had done it to place something, remove something, and leave behind a hint that would lead to another place. And if there's one thing Nero Wolfe likes almost as much as orchids and well-made food, it is a puzzle that insists on being solved. Wolfe's eyes lifted to the roomful of guests, and his voice, when he spoke, was polite enough to belong at any charity event. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, you will remain, no one will leave until I say so. That, in a townhouse full of people who believed money was a passport, was the moment the fundraiser became something else entirely. I held the key in my palm and felt its weight settle into the evening. Outside, February wind scraped at the windows inside. Nero Wolfe had found his first piece on the board. Chapter 2, a party full of polite distractions if you want to see what people really care about. Do not watch them when they are angry. Watch them when they are being polite. Anger is honest and noisy. Politeness is careful and full of hiding places. Cara Doyle's townhouse was built for hiding places. The parlor had its soft lamps and its controlled fire and its walls hung with art that didn't challenge anybody. The air carried cocoa, not the cheap kind from a corner diner, but the thick kind served in small cups, with whipped cream arranged like a legal argument. February roses sat in bowls that looked too heavy to be bowls, their red making a bright point against all the winter grays and blacks. The string quartet had switched to something slower, designed to sound like money being reasonable. All of it was meant to keep the evening gentle. All of it was meant to make trouble feel out of place. Trouble, in my experience, has no sense of shame. When I snapped the umbrella shut in the entryway and the little brass key fell out, the sound it made on the wood was not loud. It was simply distinct. A room can ignore a cough. It cannot ignore a new fact. You could have watched the reactions and written a handbook. Some people went still because they were startled. Some went still because they were calculating. A few went still because they had practiced going still when things went wrong. Those were the people who had survived other kinds of rooms. Mrs. Edna Rusk was not one of them. She stood with her hand near her throat, eyes glittering, looking at the empty velvet case in her handbag, as if it had insulted her personally. "My necklace," she said again, not pleading now, but announcing. "Those pearls were not a trinket. They are no longer a trinket." Wolfe agreed from his chair by the fireplace. He spoke as calmly as if he were commenting on a soup. "They have become a fact. Facts require order." Kara looked as if she wanted to argue with him, and wanted even more not to. "Mr. Wolfe, this is a library fundraiser. There are donors here, trustees, people who will not appreciate being treated like suspects. Your guests," Wolfe said, "have already been treated like victims. That is more offensive." Bradford Vale stepped forward, still smooth, still careful. "Miss Doyle, perhaps we should call the police." Wolfe's eyes moved to him. "If you do, the police will do what the police do. They will create commotion, and then depart. You will remain, with consequences." Vale's jaw tightened slightly. Leon Hartman, who had been standing near him, snorted. "Consequences are already here." Megan Price appeared then, sliding in beside Kara with the efficient hush of an assistant who has learned to arrive at exactly the moment her employer needs a second spine. Megan was younger than Kara by a few years, blonde in a strict way that suggested she treated her hair like a budget item, and she held a small tablet close to her as if it might protect her. "Kara," she said, low, "do you want me to handle this?" Kara's eyes flicked toward the entryway, toward me and the umbrella and the key in my hand. "No," she said. "Not yet." That was interesting. Assistants are usually the ones who handle messes. Kara did not want Megan handling this one, Wolfe said. "Miss Price." Megan turned polite. "Alert, yes, Mr. Wolfe." "You have been keeping an eye on the coat rack," Wolfe said. Megan's expression did not change, but her eyes did. They dropped for a fraction of a second, then lifted. "I try to. It is self-serve. Kara does not like staff hovering too much at these events." "Yet you hover," Wolfe said. Megan's lips pressed together. "I circulate." I made a mental note. When a person chooses a word, they reveal what they think they are doing. Megan was not watching. She was circulating. That sounded better. Wolfe nodded once, as if filing the same note. "Archie," he said. "Yeah," I said. "Bring the umbrella back to its former position. Open it." Kara stiffened. "Open it. Why would you open it again?" "Because it is useful," Wolfe said, and the tone ended the discussion. "Mr. Goodwin, proceed." I did not like reopening it because closing it had felt like breaking someone's plan, and opening it again felt like helping them rebuild it. But Wolfe had asked, and when Wolfe asks, the only sensible option is to do it or be prepared to explain why you did not, which is worse. I carried the umbrella 2 steps, set it where it had been planted, and opened it. The canopy snapped up and spread its black surface like a small roof. It made the pocket again. It made the corner without a wall. The room watched me do it. People do not like it when you make their environment strange on purpose. Wolfe said, "Now we will be still." That produced a ripple of murmurs. Because the whole point of a fundraiser is movement. Movement of bodies, movement of talk, movement of hands reaching for wallets. Stillness is what you get at funerals. "Mr. Wolfe," Kara said, strained, "I cannot freeze my guests like figures." "You can," Wolfe said, "if you explain that your alternative is a scandal attached to your name and to theirs. You have 5 minutes to choose." She looked at him, then at the room. then at Mrs. Rusk's white face. Kara drew in a breath, straightened her shoulders, and raised her voice. "Everyone," she said. "Please. We have a problem. A guest's property has been taken. Mr. Wolfe believes he can help us, but he needs 5 minutes. I am asking you, as a courtesy to me and to the library, to remain where you are and stop moving. 5 minutes, please." People did not like it. They did it anyway. That is the strange power of social obligation. You can get a room full of wealthy adults to obey like schoolchildren, if you phrase it as a courtesy. The quartet stopped playing, their bows hovering. Trays paused in midair. Conversations froze with smiles half-made. Wolfe's eyes traveled slowly, taking the room in. He was not merely watching faces, he was watching tension, posture, breath. He was watching the things people cannot disguise because they do not know they are showing them. I stood near the entryway, close enough to the umbrella to see the pocket of space behind it, and I watched too. That is my part. Wolfe's brain is the engine. Mine is the windshield. Wolfe said, "Miss Price, where were you at the moment Miss Rusk removed her necklace?" Megan blinked. I do not know the exact moment." "Then estimate," Wolfe said. Megan's eyes flicked toward Kara, then back. "Near the entry. I was checking coats." Wolfe said, "Mrs. Rusk, where were you?" Mrs. Rusk's voice was tight with outrage. "By the fireplace. I was speaking with Celeste." Celeste Marrow lifted her chin, perfectly composed. "Yes, we were discussing donor outreach." Wolfe nodded, as if the phrase amused him. "And you, Miss Marrow, did you see Mrs. Rusk place the necklace in her handbag?" Celeste's eyes narrowed slightly. I saw her open her bag for a tissue. I did not monitor her jewelry," Wolfe said. "Mr. Pell." Martin Pell, the attorney with the argumentative face, looked irritated by being summoned like staff. "Yes, you were near the entryway earlier," Wolfe said. Pell frowned. "I came in and took off my coat, like everyone." "Did you notice the umbrella?" Wolfe asked. Pell's eyes flicked toward it. "Yes, I thought it was odd. I assumed someone was careless." Wolfe's lips tightened. Carelessness has become a popular explanation tonight. He shifted his gaze to Julian Fife. "Mr. Fife, you are young and restless. You find stillness unpleasant." Julian laughed weakly. "I find being accused unpleasant." "You are not accused," Wolfe said. "You are observed. Where were you when Mrs. Rusk placed her necklace in her handbag?" Julian's eyes widened. "I do not know. I was talking. Over there." He gestured toward a cluster near the roses. Wolfe's eyes moved on, like a searchlight. Bradford Vale stood with hands clasped, expression smooth. Leon Hartman stood with his jaw tight, glaring as if the whole room was a personal offense. Kara stood very straight, as if she could hold the evening together by posture alone. Then Wolfe looked at me. "Archie," he said. "Yeah." "Step behind the umbrella." I did. The umbrella made its pocket, and I stepped into it. From there I could see the room, but the room could not see me unless someone deliberately angled themselves. It was like being a secret, Wolfe said. "Now." And his voice changed slightly. It was not louder, but it carried. "Whoever used that pocket to take Mrs. Rusk's necklace will now wish to see whether it is available again." No one moved. That was the point. In stillness, even the smallest movement becomes a confession. Wolfe waited. So did I. The room breathed. A tray trembled in a waiter's hand. A man's smile stiffened. Someone swallowed audibly. I watched eyes, because eyes move before bodies do. Megan Price's eyes kept sliding toward the entryway. Not to me, not to Wolfe, to the umbrella. Over and over, as if she expected it to do something, or as if she feared it would. Celeste Marrow glanced toward the entryway once, but her gaze was a professional scan, like a photographer checking a background. Martin Pell stared at Wolfe with the stubborn look of a man who does not like being managed. Julian Fife's fingers twitched at his side, the kind of twitch that comes from an urge to put your hands somewhere safe. Bradford Vale's gaze went to Kara, then to Wolfe, then away, as if he was measuring risk. Leon Hartman looked at the room like he wanted to say something rude and true. He held it in. Then, in the corner near the roses, a small movement. A woman shifted her handbag from one arm to the other. It was nothing. People do that. But in stillness it was a flare. It was Mrs. Rusk. She moved her bag and her fingers went into it, quick and nervous, as if checking that the emptiness was still there. That was not guilt. That was fear. Fear of being made a fool. Fear of loss. It told me she had not hidden the necklace herself. Wolfe watched it too. His eyes did not change. He simply waited again. A second movement came from the entryway itself. Charles, the head man, had been standing stiffly near the coat rack, trying to look like furniture. Now his gaze slid to the umbrella, and his hand lifted half an inch as if he were about to reach for it. And then he stopped. His face went blank again. That was not fear, that was habit. Habit of obeying Cashew's earlier instruction. "Leave it alone," Wolfe said. "You see, Miss Doyle, even staff can be trained into complicity." Kara's face flushed. "That is not fair." "It is accurate," Wolfe said. He turned his head slightly. "Miss Price." Megan's chin lifted. "Yes." "You instructed Charles to leave the umbrella," Wolfe said. Megan blinked. "Number Kara did." Wolfe nodded. "Then you heard the instruction?" "Yes. And you have been watching the umbrella since then," Wolfe said. Megan's mouth opened, then closed. "It is unusual." "It is not merely unusual," Wolfe said. "It is instrumental. The person who placed it created a blind spot. That blind spot makes theft possible. It also makes concealment possible." Kara said sharply. "Mr. Wolfe, please. We are here because Edna's necklace was taken. What is the point of embarrassing my assistant?" Wolfe looked at Kara. "We are here because someone has invaded your house and is using your politeness as camouflage." Kara stared at him. Her voice dropped. "What else?" Wolfe's eyes did not move from her. "You have something missing that is not pearls." Kara's breath caught. Megan's head snapped toward Kara. I felt the room lean. A missing necklace is a problem. A second missing thing is a pattern. Kara's voice was tight. "Who told you that?" "You told me," Wolfe said. "Not with words. With your face when you asked Miss Price to handle this, and then refused, with your insistence that this is a library fundraiser. As if the cause itself could protect you." Kara's eyes flashed. She glanced at Megan, then away. "My desk," she said. There was a sealed envelope. "Donation pledges." Murmurs started, then stopped because Wolfe lifted a hand. "Not money," Kara said quickly. "Not yet promises. Names. The envelope had the names, and the amounts it matters. Not just for the library, for reputations." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you noticed this when?" Kara swallowed. 10 minutes before you arrived. I went to my study to check something. It was gone." I said, "Kara, you told Wolfe you did not call him." "I did not," she said, and she was not lying. "Her fear was too clean for that," Wolfe said. "Then someone knew the envelope was missing, and also knew I could be summoned to provide cover. For movement, for confusion." I looked at Megan. Her eyes were fixed on Kara now. Wide assistants hate surprises, because surprises are unpaid overtime. Wolfe continued. "Miss Doyle, you have refused to show me your desk." Kara stiffened. "I have not refused. I simply—" "The room, the guests." "The desk can wait," Wolfe said. "It is not going anywhere. The coats and arrivals cannot be reconstructed later." That made sense. A desk is a desk. A room full of people is a shifting map. Wolfe looked at Charles. "How many entrances to this house?" Charles cleared his throat. "Front door service entrance through the kitchen, but it was monitored." "By whom?" Wolfe asked. "By me and the kitchen staff," Charles said. "No one came through unannounced." Wolfe nodded. "Then the person who placed the umbrella entered through the front." He turned his gaze to Megan. You were observing arrivals. Megan nodded quickly. Yes, I greeted people, directed them, made sure the guest list was managed. Then you saw who entered carrying an umbrella, Wolfe said. Megan hesitated. That hesitation was small, but in the hush it was loud. Kara's head turned sharply. Megan's cheeks reddened. There were several umbrellas. It is February. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Several umbrellas, yet only one was opened indoors. Did you see who carried that one? Megan swallowed. I saw it. Yes. And Wolfe said. Megan looked at Kara, then at the room, then at Wolfe. It was delivered. That landed like a dropped plate. Delivered, Kara said, her voice rising. What do you mean, delivered? Megan's fingers tightened on her tablet. A messenger. He brought it in. He said it was for you. For me, Kara said, incredulous. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Describe him. Megan blinked rapidly. Young Cap. A messenger bag, I assumed. He had a note. A note, Wolfe said. Megan nodded. He gave it to me. It said, please place this by the entry. It is important for tonight. It was signed. It was signed with initials. Which initials? Wolfe asked. Megan's voice dropped. Kara made a sound that was half laugh, half choke. That is me. Wolfe nodded. So the messenger impersonated you in writing, and you, Miss Price, obeyed. Megan's eyes filled with panic. I thought. Kara, I thought it was you. It was your house. Kara stared at her assistant, then at Wolfe. You did not tell me. Megan's voice cracked. I did not want to bother you. You were with guests. You were managing. There it was again, managing. People at these events manage their faces, their contacts, their generosity. Someone had used that, Wolfe said, and you left the umbrella open because you believed it was a deliberate instruction from Miss Doyle. Megan nodded, miserable. Wolfe's eyes moved to me. Archie, what does that tell you? That someone knew Megan would follow a written instruction, I said. And someone knew Kara would be too busy to notice until it mattered. Precisely, Wolfe said. Now the key. He held out his hand. I gave him the brass key. He turned it between thumb and forefinger. The number 27 flashed in the lamplight. This key, Wolfe said, was concealed in the umbrella, not dropped accidentally, concealed. He looked at Kara. Miss Doyle, do you have any lockboxes in this house? Any cabinet, drawer, or safe that uses numbered keys? Kara shook her head quickly. Number not like that. Then it is not for this house, Wolfe said. It is for somewhere else. The room shifted again, a collective unease. People like trouble to stay where it starts. This key said trouble had an address beyond the townhouse. Wolfe leaned back slightly in his chair, still the center of gravity. Now, he said, we have two missing items, a necklace and an envelope of pledges. One is property, one is power. The envelope is not valuable because it contains promises. It is valuable because it contains names. Bradford Vale spoke up, his voice measured. If the pledge list is compromised, the Library Foundation could be embarrassed. Donors value discretion. Leon Hartman said, blunt. Donors value control. Wolfe's gaze went to them and back. Embarrassment is a weak motive. Mr. Wolfe, are you saying someone stole the pledge list to blackmail people? I am saying, Wolfe replied, that someone took it because it is useful. Blackmail is one use, revenge is another, protection is another. Megan blurted, but the envelope was sealed. Wolfe's eyes went to her. Seals are for honest people. That was Wolfe, making a fact sound like a moral judgment. He lifted his hand. 5 minutes are over. You may move again, quietly. The room exhaled, and movement returned in cautious ripples. The quartet resumed, softer. Waiters began gliding again. People began whispering, instead of speaking. Kara leaned toward Wolfe. Now will you see my desk? Wolfe looked at her. In due course. First, I want a complete list of arrivals in order. From Miss Price, also a description of the messenger and any staff who saw him. Then, Mr. Goodwin will examine the entryway again. The umbrella did not only hide a key, it created opportunity, I said. And the pearls. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Yes, the pearls. The theft of Mrs. Rusk's necklace was either the principal act, or it was a distraction. This evening is full of polite distractions. Someone is counting on your guests to remain polite while being robbed. Kara swallowed. What do you think they want? Wolfe's voice lowered. They want something that cannot be purchased openly. He turned his gaze to the room, to the roses, to the cocoa, to the careful smiles returning like paint over a crack. Archie, he said quietly, stand again behind umbrella. Watch who watches you. I stepped into the pocket, and the world changed shape again. From behind the black canopy, I watched the parlor as if it were on a stage. People moved, but their eyes moved more, and in the first minute of renewed motion, I saw it. Megan Price, trying to look busy, glanced toward the entryway again, as she had all night. But this time her glance was not worried. It was directed. It went to the umbrella, then to Kara, then away, as if checking whether someone else was watching too. At the same time, Celeste Marrow drifted near the entryway with her smile in place, and her hand brushed the coat rack as if by accident. She did not take anything. She simply touched, a light tap, as if confirming the location of something that might no longer be there. And Julian Fife, restless and too handsome for his own good, slowed for half a second as he passed the umbrella, his eyes narrowing in the direction of my hidden pocket. Then he hurried on, pretending he had not looked. 3 glances, 3 tiny confessions. Wolfe sat by the fire like a large statue that could think, and when he spoke again, it was to me alone. Summonen built a corner without building a wall, he said softly. Now we will discover what they intended to move through it. I looked down at the umbrella ribs, at the shadow it cast, and I thought of the key marked 27. A key is a promise of a door. This one had been delivered with care. Whatever it opened was not in Kara Doyle's townhouse. It was waiting somewhere else, in the city that never stops moving, and that is why Wolfe had demanded stillness. He was not merely hunting a thief. He was hunting the moment a room betrays the person who thinks he is invisible. And in that quiet pocket behind the umbrella, with cocoa scent and roses and money pretending to be generous, I began to feel the shape of the next step. The trick had an address. We just had to find it. Chapter 3. The thread on the ribs after Wolfe orders stillness, and then permits movement again. The room behaves like a man who has been caught reading someone else's mail. It talks, it smiles, it sips cocoa, and it tries to pretend nothing has happened. The trouble is that nothing has happened only on the surface. The umbrella stood open in the entryway again, black as a small night, making its neat blind corner between parlor and coat rack. I stayed close to it because Wolfe wanted that pocket watched, and because I had learned that a thief prefers a place that looks harmless. Wolfe sat by the fireplace, immovable, watching the whole arrangement as if it were a diagram he had drawn. Kara Doyle managed her guests with a smile that belonged to a different evening. Megan Price hovered like a guilty conscience with a tablet. Mrs. Edna Rusk kept her chin high, but her eyes kept going to her empty velvet case, as if she hoped the pearls would return from the dead out of respect for her social position. Wolfe called me with one word. Archie. I crossed to him. He did not ask about the pearls, or the missing pledge envelope, or the brass key marked 27. He nodded toward the entryway. Examine the umbrella, he said. The ribs. You want me to check the bones. I want you, he replied, to find what has touched it. That is the thing about Wolfe. He can make an umbrella feel like a witness. I returned to the entryway and looked closely. The umbrella was good quality, and it looked freshly opened, not the way a real umbrella looks after being dragged through February slush. The metal ribs were clean. The fabric was tight. Nothing dangled, nothing frayed. Until I saw the strand. It clung to one rib near the edge, pale and straight. Not lint, not fuzz. It looked pulled clean from a woven sleeve. caught and left behind like a signature. If you told me it had been placed there with tweezers, I would not have laughed. I stepped back and called softly, "Wolfe, I've got something." He came to the parlor threshold, where he could see the entryway without stepping into it. He watched me as if my hands were a laboratory. "Do not touch it with your fingers," he said. I wasn't going to. "Ask for tweezers, ask for an envelope." Megan Price produced tweezers from an assistant's emergency kit, and Charles, the headman, supplied a plain envelope. I held the envelope under the snag, lifted the strand with the tweezers, and let it fall inside. Then I sealed the flap and wrote on it, because Wolfe likes labels almost as much as he likes results. "Thread from umbrella rib." He handed it to Wolfe. He took the envelope and did not open it. "You're not even going to look," I said. "I will not handle it," he said. "You will. Now you will find the garment from which it came." By staring at elbows. "By using your eyes," Wolfe said. "A strand pulled clean often leaves a defect, a loosened cuff, a torn seam." I went back into the parlor, where polite conversation had regained its feet, but not its balance. I circulated the way Megan claimed she circulated, which meant I wandered with purpose. I watched sleeves, cashmere, wool, leather, fur trim, expensive cloth that rarely forgives rough contact. The strand in my pocket, glimpsed under lamplight, had a faint sheen. Not silk, more like a blend that pretends to be better than it is. That narrowed it. I worked my way along the room's edge, letting my eyes do the shopping. Julian Fife's coat was too perfect. Bradford Vale's overcoat looked as if it had never brushed a doorframe. Martin Pell's sleeves were plain and intact. Leon Hartman wore a jacket over a sweater and looked like a man who would close an umbrella on principle. Celeste Marrow's sleeve was sleek, no loose thread, and her smile was too controlled for someone who had been snagged by anything. Then I saw a man I had not met. He stood near the book display, pretending to browse. Broad shoulders, early 40s, dark coat, rumpled collar. His attention drifted more to the room than to the books, which is a mistake only an amateur makes at a fundraiser. If you want to look harmless, you admire the books. I drifted closer. On his right elbow, a tiny tear at the seam, small enough to ignore if you were determined to ignore it. The weave around the tear showed a pale underthread, the same color family as the strand I had collected. I said, "You've got a tear." He looked at me and laughed at once, too quick and too loud, as if he had practiced the sound. "This old thing, I barely noticed." I smiled. "That's funny. A lot of people are barely noticing things tonight." He kept the grin. "Darren Holt. Archie Goodwin." He hesitated a beat before shaking my hand. The hesitation was not fear. It was calculation, like a man checking whether my name belonged on a list. I said, "You connected to the library." "A friend asked me," he said. "Kara." That answer arrived too smoothly. "Then you know the entryway," I said. "You know there's an umbrella open indoors, which is not a normal decoration." His laugh came again early. "I barely noticed that either. There it was twice." "Wolfe would have approved," I said. "Mr. Holt, Wolfe wants a word." The grin tightened. "Now." "Yes," I said, "in the entryway." He followed, keeping his shoulders loose like a man insisting on calm. Wolfe stood at the parlor threshold, perfectly placed, so the umbrella blocked the view and created that blind pocket. Kara and Megan lingered behind him, trying to look like hosts. They looked like people waiting for a verdict. Wolfe regarded Darren Holt's coat, the way a botanist regards an unfamiliar leaf. "Extend your right arm," Wolfe said. Darren blinked. "My arm? Now," Wolfe said. Darren extended it. I used the tweezers to lift the pale strand from the envelope and set it against the exposed thread at the tier. The match was exact. Same thickness, same faint sheen, same pale color. If coincidence existed, it did not live in that entryway. "It matches," I said. Darren Holt's laugh burst out, fast and defensive. "So I snagged a sleeve. That makes me a criminal." "It makes you," Wolfe said. Someone brushed against this umbrella while it was open indoors. Tell me how. Darren's eyes flicked to the umbrella, then away. I shoved past it. It was in the way. You noticed it, Wolfe said calmly. Darren's mouth tightened. His earlier line about barely noticing things had aged badly. Wolfe continued. Did you stand behind it? Darren gave another early laugh. Thinner. Behind an umbrella. For what? Wolfe's eyes stayed on him. To remove a necklace from a handbag. To remove an envelope from a study. To plant a key. To retrieve something planted. Choose. Kara inhaled sharply. Megan went pale. Darren snapped. I did not take anything. Wolfe nodded, almost indulgent. I did not say you did. I asked what you did behind it. Darren held Wolfe's gaze for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged a fraction. All right, I waited there a minute. It was crowded. I was checking my phone, that's all. Alone, Wolfe said. Darren hesitated. Someone brushed past me. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Describe. I didn't see a face, Darren said. That corner is blind. I saw a light sleeve. The person reached toward the coat rack. I thought they were adjusting something. Then the umbrella hit my elbow, and I cursed and moved into the parlor. A light sleeve, I repeated, filing it. Wolfe said. You came because Kara invited you. Yes, Darren said. Quick, she wanted support. Kara's voice cut in, controlled and cold. I did not invite you tonight. Darren stared at her as if she had changed the language mid-sentence. Of course you did. I did not, Kara said. I know you. That does not mean I asked you here. Darren's early laugh did not come. He swallowed. I got a message, he said. An email. It looked like it was from her, I assumed. Wolfe nodded once. Someone is using Miss Doyle's name, a messenger with a false note for the umbrella. An email for Mr. Holt that is consistent. He looked at Darren Holt. You will write down the details of that message. Sender, time, wording. You will not depend on memory later when it becomes inconvenient. Darren opened his mouth, then closed it and nodded. Megan rushed off to fetch paper as if grateful to have a task that did not involve apologies. Wolfe's gaze returned to the umbrella. It has done its work, he said softly. It created a blind corner, and in that corner an action occurred. Now we must discover what action. I said, and key 27. Wolfe's eyes went distant for a moment. A key implies a lock. The lock is not in this house. The umbrella was not only a wall, it was a vehicle. He looked at me. Archie, close it. We will take it with us. I stared at him. Take the umbrella. Yes, Wolfe said. Along with the key and the thread, someone delivered an instrument. I will not leave it here for them to retrieve. We will continue where the number 27 leads. I snapped the umbrella shut, and the sound was small, but it felt final. Darren Holt wrote under Megan Price's watchful eye, jaw tight, as if each word cost him. Wolfe did not read the page at once. He merely instructed Megan to secure it and to produce the original email later with full details. Kara Doyle looked as if she had just discovered that her own name could be forged into a weapon. Wolfe then addressed Charles, the head man, in a tone that made the man stand straighter. You will observe, Wolfe said. Note the time each guest departs. Note who approaches the coat rack and what is retrieved. Do not interfere unless I direct you. Charles swallowed and nodded. Social training does not include being drafted as an investigator, but it includes obedience to authority, and Wolfe radiates authority the way a furnace radiates heat. I asked, Lo, the light sleeve. Wolfe replied, Find it if you can. If you cannot, do not invent it. That is another Wolfe lesson. If you cannot be certain, you do not pretend. Pretending is for people who like comfort more than truth. I watched sleeves as the room loosened. There were plenty of light fabrics, wraps and gloves and cuffs, but nothing that made me sure enough to point without risking a scene. The blind corner had done its work too well. That was the point of it. Once Wolfe had extracted what he wanted, he allowed the fundraiser to resume its polite drift toward the end. He told Kara firmly not to summon police tonight, and he told her to leave her study untouched until I could inspect it in the morning. Kara agreed because she had learned that refusing Wolfe only makes him more patient. I closed the umbrella and held it by the handle. It felt ridiculous, walking out of a townhouse with someone else's umbrella, as if I had stolen it. But Wolfe insisted on removing the instrument from the crime scene. Outside, February wind bit again. We took a taxi downtown, the umbrella across my knees, the brass key and the thread envelope tucked safely in my pocket. Wolfe said little. When Wolfe says little, his mind is doing arithmetic at the brownstone on West 35th. Fritz opened the door with his usual calm, as if men arrived every night, carrying suspicious umbrellas. Wolfe shed his coat, greeted the familiar lamplight, and moved at once toward the dining room, because for Wolfe, a case is never allowed to outrank dinner. Fritz served us, and the smell alone restored my faith in civilization. Wolfe ate with the satisfaction of a man who believes order can be imposed on anything, even crime. When he finally spoke about the key, it was in the same tone he used for a sauce that had been reduced properly. 27, he said. A numbered key is not domestic. It belongs to a system, lockers, boxes, a facility that issues keys and keeps duplicates. That is where the pledge envelope and the pearls may have been sent, or where a message has been left. And Darren Holt, I said. An accessory, Wolfe replied. Or an instrument. His sleeve touched the umbrella. That tells us he used the blind corner. It does not tell us what he did there. The forged invitation suggests orchestration. Someone is arranging people the way a cook arranges ingredients. So tomorrow, I go back to Kara's and look at the study. Yes, Wolfe said. You will examine her desk, her wastebasket, and her door. You will collect facts without disturbing them. You will also obtain the email that invited Mr. Holt and any other messages received in her name. Then we will decide where key 27 belongs. He took another bite, calm and certain. I looked past him at the orchids, quiet in their corner, and thought of the umbrella ribs and the pale thread that had clung there like a signature. Someone had used manners, movement, and a blind corner to steal more than pearls. Wolfe intended to pull the whole scheme into the light, and he intended to do it his way, seated, methodical, and stubborn as a wall. After dinner, Wolfe rang for the telephone, not because he wished to talk, but because he wished to command the world at a distance. I heard him summon Saul Panzer with a brief instruction to compile, overnight, every establishment within reasonable reach that used numbered keys for lockers or boxes, including storage houses, clubs, and any place that catered to discretion. Wolfe did not explain. He never does. Saul would do it anyway, because Saul is paid to accept Wolfe's silence as a form of clarity. When Wolfe finished the call, he looked at me over his coffee. You noticed the laugh, he said. Holtz, I replied. Yes, Wolfe said. It arrived too early. That indicates rehearsal, or fear, or both. Remember it. When a man laughs before he thinks, he is attempting to outrun logic. Whatever waited behind 27, Wolfe intended to meet it seated, and I intended to keep my eyes open long enough to see who tried to run. Chapter 4. The hidden corner's purpose, the morning after a respectable crime has been committed, is always the same in New York. The city pretends nothing happened, and the people involved try to decide which lie will hurt least. February sunlight came in thin and hard between the buildings, making the street look scrubbed and cold. The wind had teeth. It always has teeth when a man wants to think. Wolfe, naturally, had done his thinking without leaving the brownstone. When I came downstairs, he was already back from the plant rooms, smelling faintly of damp soil and triumph, and Fritz was setting out breakfast with the calm of a man whose world contains sources more alarming than burglars. Wolfe ate in silence, then drank his coffee as if it were a treaty. When I said I was going up to Kara Doyle's townhouse to look at the entryway again, he nodded once. Do not improvise, he said. Observe. Observation is my gift, I told him. Improvisation is my hobby. He ignored that, which was fair. At 9, I was at Kara's place, let in by Charles, the headman, who looked as if he had spent the night guarding the coat rack with his eyelids propped open. The townhouse was quiet now, stripped of music and cocoa and those February roses that had seemed so cheerful while people were being robbed. In daylight, the parlor looked like a room that had been carefully arranged to impress strangers. It had succeeded. The entryway was where last night still lived. Even without the umbrella, I could feel the geometry of it. Polished wood floor, the coat rack, the narrow table beneath it, the mirror on the opposite wall. I stood in the parlor doorway and stared at the line of sight, the way Wolfe had done, and I understood again why he had called it a wall. I tested it. I stepped to the coat rack, then to the spot where the umbrella had been planted, then back to the parlor threshold. Without the umbrella, the space was honest. With it, the space became a liar. Charles watched me with the patient misery of a man who wishes his job was still simply opening doors. "Did anyone sweep the floor?" I asked. "No, sir," he said. "Miss Doyle said not to touch anything." That was good, Kara was learning. I crouched by the baseboard where the umbrella's tip had rested. There was a faint mark on the wood, a tiny crescent, as if the metal point had been set down with pressure and held there. That was not the mark of a guest who opens an umbrella by accident. That was the mark of placement. I straightened and looked at the coat rack table. It was bare now, but there were faint squares in the dust where objects had sat. A handbag, a small case, a pair of gloves, a neat little map of a busy night. "What about the study?" I asked. Charles led me down the hall. Kara's study was a comfortable room with a desk that faced the door, because Kara liked to see who entered. The top drawer held letterhead and envelopes. The blotter was clean, too clean. Kara had wanted order. Someone had wanted a missing envelope. I checked the wastebasket. Empty, of course. A thief might forget to remove an envelope. A tidy host might throw it away. Kara had told me she had not touched it since noticing it missing. But human beings say things like that even when their hands have been moving. "I did not accuse," I observed. The desk drawer smelled faintly of paper and perfume. The desktop had the kind of shine you get from wiping with a cloth. Someone had wiped. By the time I was done, Kara and Megan arrived, both with the tight faces of women, stepping back into a place where something had been taken. Kara had a small notebook in her hand, as if she intended to fight uncertainty with ink. Megan had her tablet and the rigid posture of someone trying to look indispensable. Kara said, "Did you find it?" "No," I said. "But I found what matters. Your entryway is a perfect blind spot when an umbrella is placed right. Wolfe wants you at his office. He will not come here." Kara's jaw tightened. Then she nodded. She had already learned that Wolfe's stubbornness is part of his method. We rode back to West 35th in separate taxis, because Kara's townhouse did not include the habit of sharing rides with a detective and his assistant. And because I like to arrive before my guests and make sure Wolfe is in the mood to be helpful. By 10, Wolfe was behind his desk, calm, fed, and arranged. The closed umbrella leaned against the safe in the corner, looking innocent in the way a tool looks innocent when it is not in use. "You have brought them," Wolfe said when Fritz announced Kara and Megan. "I do what I can," I told him. Kara entered first. Coat collar still up despite the heat, eyes bright with strain. Megan followed, tablet clutched to her chest, a practiced breath already prepared for apologizing. Wolfe indicated the red leather chairs. "Be seated. You will recreate last night." Kara sat, Megan perched. Wolfe folded his hands. "Recreate the arrival flow," he said. "Who came in when, who stood where, who greeted whom." Kara blinked. There were dozens. "Then begin with the beginning," Wolfe replied. "Miss Price, you will assist. Mr. Goodwin will clarify positions." They gave him the room as they had lived it. Doors opening, coats hanging, greetings traded. Kara had greeted at the parlor threshold once the early donors arrived. Megan had worked the door and the entryway, running the little traffic pattern between the coat rack and the parlor. Wolfe listened without impatience, which is how he shows that he is impatient. He stopped them on small points where Megan stood when she spoke. When Kara stepped away to her study, which guest arrived alone, which arrived in a cluster. Wolfe does not collect stories. He collects angles. When they reached the early arrivals, Wolfe's voice sharpened slightly. "Mr. Holt." Kara stiffened. "Darren Holt." "Yes," Wolfe said. "He came early." Kara looked to Megan. "Did he?" Megan nodded quickly. "Yes. Before most people, about 7:10. Describe his arrival," Wolfe said. Megan's voice steadied as she clung to detail. "He came in alone. He had a dark coat and something flat in his hand. An envelope, I thought. He asked where he could put something safe." Kara's head turned sharply. "Safe." Megan nodded, cheeks coloring. "Those were his words." Wolfe's face remained composed. "And you replied?" "I said the coat rack was right there," Megan said, gesturing. "He asked if there was a private room. I said Miss Doyle's study was private." He laughed and said, "Then I will use the corner." Wolfe's gaze stayed on her. "What corner?" "The entryway corner," Megan said, "near the coat rack." "And you saw what he did?" Wolfe asked. "I did not," Megan admitted. "People arrived. I turned to greet. I heard paper crinkle near the coat rack, like an envelope being handled. When I looked back, he was already walking into the parlor." Kara's fingers tightened on her purse. The pledge envelope was thick paper. It would crinkle. Wolfe nodded once. "It would." He sat silent for a moment, and the silence made Kara shift, as if the chair had grown uncomfortable. Wolfe uses silence the way a surgeon uses a pause before the cut. "Archie," he said. I fetched the umbrella and opened it. The canopy snapped up, black and obedient, and for an instant it felt as if we had invited last night back into the room. "Place it," Wolfe instructed. As it stood in the entryway, approximate the line of sight from parlor to coat rack. Fritz, summoned by a glance, brought in our portable coat rack. I set it by the office door and positioned the umbrella so it created that same sly pocket, the slice of space that existed and did not exist, depending on where you stood. Wolfe gestured to Kara's chair. "From there, what can you see?" Kara leaned forward. "The rack, yes, the door, but not behind the umbrella. There is a slice I cannot see." "Miss Price," Wolfe said, "stand where you greeted." Megan rose and moved. Her eyes widened as she looked. "It blocks it. It blocks the exact spot by the rack. I can see people entering, but not what their hands do in that corner." "Exactly," Wolfe said. "Just enough space for two people to meet hands without meeting eyes." Kara's voice went tight. "So someone used it to pass something. Or to take something," Wolfe said. "The distinction matters later." He turned to Kara. "Now answer one question. Did any guest arrive carrying an envelope, then later appear without it?" Kara hesitated, then nodded, reluctant. "Darren Holt. When I saw him in the parlor, he mentioned a thank you card for the library. Later I noticed he had no envelope," Megan said. "Quick, he stayed until the end. He did not slip out early." Wolfe lifted a hand. "I do not care when he left. I care where the envelope went." Kara drew a breath. "I asked him this morning. He laughed and said he barely noticed the umbrella, barely noticed anything. He said it was only a thank you card." A laugh that arrives too early is an excuse trying to outrun thought. He looked at me. "Telephone Mr. Holt. Invite him." I called. Holt answered, as if he had been listening for the ring. "Mr. Holt," I said. "Wolfe wishes to speak to you now." There was a pause, then forced lightness. "This about the pearls." "It is about your envelope," I said. "Come to West 35th. Another pause. "All right," when I hung up. Wolfe looked at Kara. "You see, innocent things do not require safe corners in crowded homes." Kara's mouth tightened. "Unless the person is nervous." "Nervousness is not a defense," Wolfe said. "It is a symptom." While we waited, Wolfe had them walk him through. The moment the umbrella appeared, Megan described the rush at the door around 7:45. Her attention split, her patience thin. She had looked up, and the umbrella was suddenly open in the entryway. She had been annoyed, then obedient, because a note with Kara's initials had told her to leave it. Wolfe asked, "Did the note instruct you to open it?" Megan shook her head. "It said to place it by the entry. When I saw it open, I assumed the owner had done it." "And yet no owner claimed it," Wolfe said. Megan's voice went small. "Number so, it opened itself in your mind," Wolfe said. "That is the beauty of a polite trick. People do the work of the trickster." At 11, Holt arrived. Fritz showed him in. Holt walked into Wolfe's office with his shoulders loose and his smile ready, then saw Kara and Megan and stopped using the smile. Wolfe did not offer him a chair. "Mr. Holt," Wolfe said, "you asked where to put something safe." Holt laughed. "It came fast, then died when no one joined it. I was joking." "Innocent things," Wolfe said, "do not require safe corners in crowded homes." Holt's eyes flicked to the umbrella and away. It was a card for the library. "Then where is it?" Wolfe asked. Holt spread his hands. "I left it on the table under the coats." Kara's voice was sharp. There was no envelope there when the entryway was cleared. Holt's jaw tightened. "Then someone took it." Wolfe's gaze held him. "Did you hand it to someone?" "No," Holt said too quickly. Wolfe waited. After 3 seconds, Holt's eyes shifted and his voice changed. "I did not see who," Holt said. "I was near the rack. Someone brushed past. A light sleeve. I felt the envelope slide. I thought it was my own clumsiness." "Behind the umbrella," Wolfe said. Holt swallowed. "Yes." Wolfe nodded once. "That is the purpose of the corner. A man can lose an envelope without admitting he gave it away." Kara stared at Holt. "Why did you want it safe?" Holt's cheeks reddened. "Because it was private." Wolfe did not press the contents yet. He had what he wanted, the mechanism, and Wolfe is never greedy with facts. Greed makes a man sloppy. He looked at the umbrella, then at Kara, and his voice came calm and final. "This is not concealment," Wolfe said. "It is choreography. Someone arranged movement sightlines and polite distraction so that objects could change hands without witnesses. Your townhouse became a stage, Miss Doyle, and your guests became props." Kara's breath caught. Wolfe's eyes went to me, expectant. "Now we will find where the choreography led. The key marked 27 is a direction. Archie will follow it, and we will see who has been dancing." He reached for the brass key on the desk, turned it once between thick fingers, and set it down as if it were a chess piece that had finally shown its purpose. "I have already requested," Wolfe said, "a survey of places that issue numbered keys, storage houses, clubs, lockers. Mr. Panzer will bring the list. You will begin with those nearest Miss Doyle's neighborhood, because choreography prefers a short walk between stages." Kara found her voice again. "Mr. Wolfe, you think the pearls and the pledge envelope are in a locker?" "I think they may be," Wolfe said. "Or I think something is in locker 27 that will explain why an umbrella was delivered to your door. Either possibility is useful." Megan's eyes were wide. "What if it is nothing?" Wolfe looked at her. "Then someone has expended effort to create nothing. That is rare." Holt shifted, uncomfortable, as if he had just realized he had been recruited as an actor without pay. "Am I free to go?" Wolfe regarded him. "You are free to be foolish. I advise against it. Mr. Goodwin will want to reach you quickly." Holt nodded, stiff, and left with Fritz. Kara rose too, but hesitated. "My house," she said quietly. "My guests, I feel as if I handed the thief my own invitation." Wolfe's voice was not unkind. "You did, so did Miss Price. So did Mr. Holt. That is why this method was chosen. It uses decency as a lever. Now, go home and touch nothing you have not already touched, and do not attempt to manage this with phone calls. Management is what the thief counted on." Kara nodded once, then went out with Megan, their heels sounding sharp on the hall floor. When the door closed, I looked at the umbrella, shut now and leaning again against the safe. "You know," I said, "I have carried stranger things out of townhouses, but not many that wanted to conduct an orchestra." Wolfe's mouth tightened, which was as close as he came to amusement. The umbrella has done its job. Now it will do ours. And my job, I said, patting the key in my pocket. Wolfe's eyes were steady. Yes, find the lock. The rest will follow. Chapter 5. The coat rack conversation when Nero Wolfe decides a room is a stage. He expects the actors to return to their marks, whether they want to or not. He had Cara Doyle's townhouse back under his hand that afternoon, not by stepping inside it himself, but by instructing it from West 35th, the way a man conducts an orchestra from a comfortable chair. Cara, to her credit, did not argue much. She sounded strained on the phone, like a woman discovering that her nice life had been built with invisible doors in it. "You want us to meet again," she said. "I want," Wolfe replied, "a conversation in the proper place." "The proper place is your office," she said. "For me," Wolfe said, "not for my question." There was a pause, and I could almost see Cara's eyes narrowing as she tried to decide whether Wolfe was being difficult or merely Wolfe. "That is a common problem." Finally, she said, "All right, you come here then." I, Wolfe said, "will not." "Then how?" she began. "And I will speak by telephone, which is an invention created to spare us one another's company." That ended it. Cara's tone went thin, but she agreed because she had begun to understand that when Wolfe refuses something, it is not a negotiation, it is a fact. So at 4:30, I was back on East 73rd, climbing Cara's scrubbed steps with the familiar feeling that polite houses are the most dangerous. Charles let me in with the care of a man handling a lit candle. "They're in the parlor," he said. "Miss Doyle, Miss Price, and Mr. Holt. And the security contractor." "The security contractor," I repeated. Charles nodded. "Mr. Mercer." That was new, and it was also exactly what Wolfe had been hunting. A blind corner does not become useful until someone knows how to place it. I walked into the parlor and found them arranged like a committee that had lost its agenda. Cara sat upright in a chair that looked expensive and unforgiving. Megan Price sat on the edge of another, tablet on her knees as if she expected to be graded. Darren Holt sprawled slightly, trying to look casual and failing, and standing near the fireplace, hands in his pockets, was a man with broad shoulders and the calm posture of someone who is paid to be calm. Kyle Mercer. Mid-30s, close haircut, clean jaw, good coat, not charity. Gala good, but professional good. The kind of man who can stand at a door for 10 hours and still look like he belongs there. On the side table sat Cara's phone on speaker, a small dark object that represented Nero Wolfe better than any photograph could. Wolfe's voice came from it, full and precise. "Good afternoon, Archie," Wolfe said. "Are you there?" "I'm here," I said. "Everyone is here, including Kyle Mercer." "Splendid," Wolfe said. "Miss Doyle, are you prepared to be candid?" Cara's eyes flicked to the phone. "I have been candid. You have been," Wolfe corrected. "Selective. That is different." Darren Holt shifted, then smiled. "Can we not make this dramatic? It's a necklace and a missing envelope." Wolfe's voice remained calm. "Mr. Holt, your instinct to reduce the matter is noted. It is also futile." I moved to the entryway and set down the umbrella. Yes, the umbrella. I had brought it back because Wolfe told me to, he had said. If we wish to understand a trick, we must reconstruct it. He also said he did not care if I felt absurd carrying an umbrella through the city in clear daylight. Wolfe rarely cares about my dignity. I opened it and placed it precisely where it had been, using the faint crescent mark on the floor as my guide. The black canopy sprang up like a small roof, and instantly the entryway became dishonest again. I returned to the parlor. Darren's eyes followed me for a fraction of a second, then snapped away. That told me he knew exactly what the umbrella meant now. Wolfe's voice came through the speaker. "Archie, stand in the entryway pocket behind the umbrella." I did. From there, I could see the parlor at an angle, and I could also see the hallway that led toward the kitchen and the back door. More important, I could feel the purpose of the place. It was not a hiding spot for a person. It was a hiding spot for hands. Wolfe said, "Now we will have the coat rack conversation." Kara exhaled sharply. Do you have to call it that? Yes, Wolfe said. Names are useful. Miss Price, you will answer questions. Mr. Holt, you will answer questions. Mr. Mercer, you will answer questions. If any of you attempt to adorn the truth, Mr. Goodwin will notice. That was flattering in a way, but it also meant I had to pay attention like a bookkeeper. Wolfe began, as he often does, with the simplest thing. Who opened that umbrella? Darren answered too fast. Some owned clumsy. Wolfe did not respond at once. He let the silence sit on Darren's words. Silence makes quick answers look foolish. Then Darren added, because he could not help himself. It was probably some donor in a hurry. The door stuck, coats everywhere. People stepping over each other. Those things happen. No one had asked for those details. That is a rule I have learned the hard way. A truthful man gives what is requested, because he is not afraid of what will come next. A man making a story adds cushions. Wolfe's voice was mild. You were not asked to describe the evening. You were asked who opened the umbrella. Darren laughed. Early again, then stopped. I do not know. I did not see. I barely noticed it until this became a circus. You noticed it enough to snag your sleeve, Wolfe said. Darren's hand went to his right elbow, a quick tug at the fabric, as if checking the tear for the 10th time. It was a small movement, but it was constant. And once you see a habit, you cannot unsee it. I watched him as Wolfe continued. Mr. Holt, Wolfe said. You arrived early. You asked for a safe place to put something. You positioned yourself near the coat rack and behind the umbrella. Why? Darren shifted, then leaned toward the library angle as if it were a life raft. Because I care about the library. Kara knows that. I wanted to be helpful, to bring something meaningful, and I did not want it lost in a crowd. The library, Wolfe said, is not a cupboard to hide behind. We are discussing timing, not generosity. Kara's fingers tightened on her notebook. Megan stared at Darren, not with anger, but with a new kind of confusion, as if she was realizing that her tidy mental categories did not include this. Wolfe's voice sharpened slightly. Mr. Holt, did you bring an envelope? Yes, Darren said. A card. Did you leave without it? I told you I set it down. Someone could have taken it. Wolfe let that sit, then said, Miss Price, you will speak now. Did you see Mr. Holt speaking to Mr. Mercer? Megan's head jerked up. She looked at Kara, then at the phone, then down at her tablet, as if hoping the answer was written there. She began. Kara's voice was clipped. Megan swallowed. Yes, I did. Kyle Mercer's posture did not change. He stayed by the fireplace, hands in pockets, face calm. A man like that builds calm, the way other men build muscle. Wolfe asked, Where? Megan's voice was small. Near the entryway, by the coat rack, behind the umbrella, Wolfe said. Megan nodded. Yes, I did not see their hands, only their shoulders leaning in briefly. It was like a private word. Darren's laugh came again too fast. We said, hello, Kyle works here. Kyle Mercer finally spoke. His voice was level, professional. I contract for building security. I was asked to be present because it was a fundraiser, high-profile guests. Wolfe's voice was polite. And you chose to converse behind an umbrella. Kyle's eyes flicked toward the entryway, then back to the parlor. I did not choose it. People were passing. It was crowded. It was not crowded at 7:10, Wolfe said. Kyle Mercer's calm held, but it was a shade tighter. The way a belt is tight one notch too far. I do not recall the exact minute. Wolfe's voice did not change. Then I will assist. The period in question is early, before the rush. Miss Price, you will specify the moment when you observed their shoulders leaning in. Megan blinked. It was shortly after Darren arrived, before the messenger incident, before most donors. Wolfe said. Then it was not crowded. Therefore, the umbrella was not merely in the way, it was used. Darren's gaze shot to Megan. Then away Kyle's gaze remained steady. Wolfe asked, Miss Doyle, why was Mr. Mercer present so early? Kara hesitated. That hesitation carried weight. He is responsible for the building, she said. He checks doors, alarms, he said. He would do an early sweep. Wolfe replied. A sweep of your house? It is not a sweep, Kara snapped. It is my home. I hired him to make sure everything was secure. And yet, Wolfe said, your home was used as a stage for theft. Kara's face tightened. Megan looked as if she wanted to shrink into her chair. Wolfe continued. Miss Price, you heard paper crinkle near the coat rack at a time you could not see. Did you also hear paper when Mr. Holt and Mr. Mercer leaned in? Megan's eyes widened as she searched her memory. Yes, I think I did. A faint sound like an envelope flexing. Darren's mouth opened. That is nonsense. It is not nonsense, Wolfe said. It is a recollection. Now we will stop circling, Mr. Mercer. You will explain your contact with Mr. Holt behind the umbrella. Kyle Mercer's voice remained even. I greeted him. He asked where to place a card. I pointed to the table. That is all, Wolfe said. Then you will have no objection to describing the card. Kyle's eyes narrowed a fraction. A thank you card, Wolfe asked. What color? Kyle paused. A short pause, but it existed. I do not remember, Kyle said. Wolfe's voice was gentle. You remember enough to call it a thank you card, but not enough to recall its color. That is inconvenient. Darren said quickly. It was white, or cream. It was a card. Wolfe's voice turned to him. You answer questions not asked, and you volunteer details too easily. That is a habit of a man trying to guide a conversation. Darren's face reddened. This is absurd. I came to donate. To donate, Wolfe said, or to deliver. That landed. Kara stiffened. Megan's eyes went wide. Kyle Mercer's calm held. But it was now the calm of a man who knows his professional mask is being tested. Wolfe said, Miss Doyle, does Mr. Mercer have access to your study? Kara's voice was tight. He knows the house. He has been here. He has keys for doors and systems. Wolfe replied, then he could enter your study. Kyle spoke firm. I did not enter her study. Wolfe's voice was still polite. That is not what I said. I stayed behind the umbrella, listening, but my eyes were not idle. Kyle Mercer's coat was hanging open slightly. His right hand was deep in the pocket, as if holding something. His left hand rested loose by his side. He stood with his weight balanced, ready. Men who plan quiet exchanges also plan quiet exits. You can read it in their feet, Wolfe asked. Mr. Mercer, where were you at the time Miss Doyle discovered the pledge envelope missing? Kyle said. I was in the kitchen area, checking the service entrance. And after that, Wolfe asked, did you step out to take a call? Kara answered before Kyle could. Yes, he stepped out. He said he had to speak to someone. Wolfe's voice sharpened just slightly. Where did he step out? Kara hesitated. Toward the back, Wolfe said. Archie. Yeah, I said. Check the hallway, Wolfe instructed. If Mr. Mercer is not present, find him. Kyle Mercer's head turned a fraction toward the hall, then back, as if he had heard the instruction before it was spoken. That alone was worth a note. I stepped out from behind the umbrella, crossed the parlor, and went down the hallway toward the kitchen and back door. The house was quiet except for the muffled hum of a refrigerator and the soft sounds of staff trying to be invisible. Near the back door, I found Kyle Mercer exactly where a man ready to leave early would be found. Coat on collar up, one hand on the doorknob, the other holding his phone. His posture was casual in the way a man looks casual when he wants to be seen as casual. He looked at me and smiled briefly. Mr. Goodwin. Mr. Mercer, I said. You leaving? He shrugged. I was stepping out to take a call. I did not want to disturb your meeting. A call with your coat on, I said. He did not blink. It is cold. Not in here, I said. He let the smile fade. Is there a problem? The problem, I told him, is that Wolfe asked for you immediately, and you are standing at the back door like a man who has suddenly remembered He left his oven on. Kyle's eyes narrowed. I have a business. Then do business after you answer questions, I said. Come back. He held my gaze. He was not a fool, and he was not a boy. He was a man who had learned how far he could push without breaking the rules. The trouble for him was that Wolfe does not use the same rules. Kyle said, I am not obligated. You are in Kara Doyle's house, I replied. You were present when property disappeared. If you want to look clean, you do not walk away from the sink with soap on your hands. He stared, then released the doorknob. He turned and walked back down the hall with measured steps, not hurried, not slow, perfectly controlled. That control made me more suspicious, not less. In the parlor, Kara had risen. Megan stood too, tablet clutched like a shield. Darren Holt sat again, but his knee bounced. Wolfe's voice came from the phone, calm as ever. Mr. Mercer has returned, I said. Thank you, Wolfe said. Mr. Mercer, you were ready to leave. Kyle's jaw tightened. I was taking a call. People who plan quiet exchanges, Wolfe said, also plan quiet exits. Kyle's face did not change, but his eyes hardened. That is a clever line. It is not a line, Wolfe replied. It is an observation now. We will simplify. Who opened that umbrella? Kyle spoke quickly. I did not. Darren spoke at the same time. Not me. Wolfe's voice remained steady. Only one of you needs to be lying. Kara made a sharp sound. Mr. Wolfe, please, if you have an accusation, make it. I have a question, Wolfe said. Accusations come later when I have the patience to be certain, he continued. Mr. Holt, you answered too quickly last night, and too quickly today. You tug at your sleeve as if you are checking a wound. You attempt to redirect toward the library, toward generosity, toward anything but timing. Timing is the spine of this matter. Darren snapped. I am not on trial. Not yet, Wolfe said. Megan's voice broke in sudden, as if she could no longer hold the guilt. I saw them. I saw Darren and Kyle behind the umbrella. It was brief, but it was deliberate. They leaned in like they were passing something. I did not see hands because I could not see hands. Wolfe's voice softened. Because the umbrella blocked your view. Megan nodded hard. Yes, Wolfe said. Then we have the purpose. The umbrella is not concealment. It is choreography. It tells people where to stand, where to look, and where not to look, and it creates a narrow corridor for objects to move. Kyle Mercer's voice stayed calm. You are building a story, Wolfe replied. I am building a structure of facts. You may call it a story if it comforts you, Wolfe asked. Mr. Mercer, did you install any temporary security measures last night? Any lockboxes? Any portable lockers? Kyle hesitated, then said, Number Wolfe's voice sharpened. Did you advise Miss Doyle to use a lockbox off-site for pledge materials? Kara blinked. He did mention a private storage service. For paperwork, he said it was safer than keeping sensitive lists at home. Wolfe's voice turned gentle again, which is when it becomes dangerous. And did he mention a number? A locker number? A key? Kara's eyes widened slowly, the way a person recognizes a word from a dream. He said there are numbered boxes. He said the company issues keys. Wolfe said, did he say 27? Kara swallowed. I do not remember. Wolfe replied, memory will not help us. Records will. Darren Holt sprang up. This is insane, you cannot. His sentence died because Kyle Mercer's hand came out of his coat pocket, and for an instant I saw the edge of something small and metallic. Then it was hidden again. Not a weapon, not dramatic, something else. A second key, perhaps, or a tag, or a phone. Wolfe's voice remained steady. Mr. Goodwin, stand nearer to Mr. Mercer. I did, casually, as if I was simply changing positions. Kyle watched me with calm eyes. Wolfe said, Mr. Mercer, you attempted a quiet exit. Mr. Holt attempts a noisy distraction. Both are methods. Now, one more simple question. Who opened that umbrella? Kyle Mercer met my gaze, then looked at the phone as if he could stare Wolfe into silence. "I will answer," Kyle said. I opened it. Darren's head snapped toward him. Megan inhaled sharply. Kara stiffened, face draining. Wolfe's voice did not change. "Why?" Kyle's mouth tightened. "Because the entryway was wet. People track in slush, an open umbrella catches drips. That is practical," Wolfe said, "and it is also a lie." Kyle's eyes hardened. "Prove it," Wolfe replied. "In time," he added. "Mr. Mercer, you opened it and placed it specifically to block sightlines. You did so because you knew the angle. That is your trade. You are a security contractor. You understand coverage and blind spots. You created one." Kara's voice was low. "Wounded Kyle." "Why?" Kyle exhaled. Slow. "I did not steal anything from you. Miss Doyle, keep Mr. Mercer in your parlor. If he departs, you will telephone the police. Miss Price, you will remain with her. Mr. Holt, you will also remain. If any of you leave, you will become instantly the most interesting person in New York." Darren barked a laugh, then stopped when no one joined it. Wolfe continued. "Archie, bring me the details on Mr. Mercer's recommended storage service, including location, hours, and the process for issuing numbered keys. We will find the lock that belongs to 27. If Mr. Mercer has attempted to choreograph theft, he has likely choreographed storage as well," Kyle Mercer said. Cold. "You cannot order me." Wolfe's voice was untroubled. "I have not ordered you. I have predicted you. There is a difference." I looked at Kyle. He stood still, coat on, eyes flat. He was a man who had planned a quiet exchange and a quiet exit, and had been interrupted by a man who does not permit quiet exits when they interfere with logic. As I moved toward the entryway to close the umbrella, I felt again how neat the trick was. Not loud, not forceful, not crude, just a little piece of choreography, and a room full of decent people doing the rest of the work. I snapped the umbrella shut. The sound was small. Behind me, Wolfe's voice came through the phone, faintly satisfied. "Good," he said. "Now the dance has a partner." Chapter 6. The envelope that isn't money. If you want to know what a man values, watch what he protects when he believes he is being reasonable. Kyle Mercer kept saying he was there for safety, not for secrets, and he said it with the calm certainty of a man who has made a living turning words into locks. We were still in Kara Doyle's parlor. The fire was lit because people with money prefer flames even when they are unnecessary. The flowers had been changed since last night, but the room still smelled faintly of cocoa and roses, as if the house itself had not yet forgiven being used for a theft. Kara stood near the mantel, arms folded tightly enough to press creases into her sleeves. Megan Price hovered 2 steps behind her, clutching her tablet like a shield that had failed. Darren Holt sat again, but he looked less like a donor and more like a man who has realized he wandered into the wrong building. Charles, the head man, remained at a respectful distance, very straight, very quiet, looking as if he would like to return to a universe where umbrellas are opened outdoors. On the side table, Kara's phone was still on speaker. Nero Wolfe's voice came from it, deep and unhurried, as if he were comfortably seated behind his desk on West 35th, which he was. Kyle Mercer stood in the center of the room with his coat still on. He had removed his hand from the doorknob, but his posture had not lost that readiness. He looked at us in turn, then back at the phone, as if the device were the real opponent. Kyle said. "I opened the umbrella." "Yes. That does not mean I stole anything. I was hired to keep this place safe." Wolfe's voice was calm. "You have kept it safe from what?" "Mr. Mercer, from burglars who announce themselves, or from the kind who operate by invitation." Kyle's jaw tightened. "I am not a thief," Wolfe replied. "That is not an answer, it is a slogan." Kara's voice cut in, controlled and sharp. "Kyle, if you have any explanation, now is the moment to use it." Kyle looked at her, then at Megan, then at Darren. His eyes had the flat look of a man calculating whether honesty will cost more than silence. "I came early," Kyle said. I checked the doors. I checked the service entrance. I stood near the entryway, because you had donors arriving. I did not go into your study. I did not touch any pledge envelope. Wolfe's voice remained polite. Your insistence is vigorous. Kyle's eyes narrowed. What do you want, Mr. Wolfe? I want, Wolfe said, truth to prefer an audience. There was a pause. I could almost see Wolfe shifting in his chair, arranging the next step as neatly as he arranges his napkin. Mr. Mercer, Wolfe said, empty your pockets. Do it slowly, and do it in front of witnesses. Kyle's head snapped up. Number Wolfe's voice did not rise. It did not need to. You will. Kyle stared at the phone. You cannot make me, Wolfe replied. Miss Doyle can. This is her house, and you have already attempted to depart. People who are innocent do not flee simple questions. Kyle's mouth tightened. His eyes went to Kara. Kara's voice was low and final. Kyle, do it. Kyle held her gaze for a long second, then exhaled as if conceding something he had hoped not to concede. He stepped toward the coffee table and began, methodically, to remove items. He emptied the right coat pocket first, a key ring with several keys, a small flashlight, a folded receipt. He placed them on the table with careful precision, like a man showing he has nothing to hide and resenting the need to prove it. He emptied the left coat pocket, 2 more receipts, a packet of mints, a slim plastic card with his company name, then a folded brochure, glossy, creased down the middle. He hesitated a fraction, then set it down too. No envelope. He turned out his trouser pockets, more keys, smaller, on a separate ring, numbered tags attached, a few coins, a phone, nothing that looked like a pledge envelope, nothing that looked like pearls. Kyle spread his hands. There, Megan inhaled, as if she had been holding her breath for an hour. Darren Holt gave a short laugh that came late for once, a sound that said relief and irritation. Kara's shoulders loosened a fraction, then tightened again, because relief can be insulting when you have been wronged. I felt it too. I am not proud of it, but I am human. For a moment I thought, all right, that is it. Kyle is a facilitator, not a holder. He may have opened the umbrella, but the goods are elsewhere. We have to find the elsewhere. Wolfe's voice came through the speaker, dry and steady. Do not congratulate yourselves. We have not finished looking. Kyle's eyes narrowed. You have looked, Wolfe replied. I have heard. There is a difference. He paused, then said, Archie, look at his gloves. Kyle's hands, until that second, had been bare. Now he reached into his coat and produced a pair of dark gloves, heavy enough for February. He had set them on the table without thinking, and I had not thought about them either, because I had been watching for envelopes and pearls. Now I leaned in. The gloves were dark, but the fingers were marked. Not dirt, not wear, smudges, fresh and uneven, as if brushed against something wet. Ink. I looked up. Ink on the fingers. Kyle's face did not change much, but his eyes did. He had not expected that. Kyle said quickly, pen leak. Wolfe's voice came at once, mild as a physician. Produce the pen. Kyle blinked. What? The pen? Wolfe repeated. If it leaked, it is in your possession, and it is not clean. Kyle hesitated, then reached into his coat again and took out a pen. He placed it on the table. It was clean. I picked it up and inspected it. No ink on the barrel, no stain on the cap. The tip was dry. I looked at Kyle. Your pen did not leak. Kyle's mouth tightened. I wiped it. Wolfe's voice was smooth. With what? Your tongue. Kyle said nothing. Wolfe continued. Ink transfers in 2 common ways. Mr. Mercer, 1, from a leaking instrument, 2, from paper recently written on or recently stamped. Paper carries ink on the surface for a time. A hand that handles it receives the residue. A glove is even more likely to collect it. Kara's eyes widened slowly. You handled the pledge envelope. Kyle's jaw set. I handled paperwork. I am security. I keep logs, I sign forms, Wolfe replied. Then your ink would be on the palm and the cuff, not neatly on the fingertips, as if you pinched an envelope by the edges. I bent and looked again. Wolfe was right. The smudging was on the fingertips and slightly on the pads, not across the palm. It looked like a man had held a flat object carefully, by the corners. Megan's voice came out thin. The pledge envelope had a seal. Kara uses one of those, a wax stamp. Kara nodded. Stiff. Yes, the seal had ink on the address label too, from my printer. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Recently printed labels transfer ink, particularly if touched before fully set. Mr. Mercer's gloves are not the gloves of a man who held a flashlight. They are the gloves of a man who held paper. Kyle's eyes flashed. This is speculation, Wolfe replied. It is inference, supported by physical evidence. That is more reliable than your denial. Kyle drew a breath, slow. He looked at Kara. I did not steal your envelope. We are not discussing money, Mr. Mercer. Kyle's gaze snapped to the phone. What else is there? Wolfe's voice was very even. Leverage. The room went still for a beat. Even Darren Holt stopped shifting. Kara's lips parted, then closed. Megan clutched her tablet tighter. I said, Wolfe. If Kyle handled the envelope, where is it now? It is not here, Wolfe replied. That is the next question. Do not attempt to answer it with wishful thinking. Use your eyes. That is Wolfe's favorite advice. And it is also the one that gets me into the most trouble. I looked at the items on the table again. Keys, receipts, a brochure, 2 sets of keys, one ring more official than the other. The brochure was glossy and folded, as if it had been shoved into a pocket in a hurry, then carried around like a reminder. I picked up the brochure and opened it. It was for a private storage service, clean design, cheerful promises of safety, climate control, discreet access. The sort of place that advertises security the way a bank advertises stability. I glanced at the key ring with numbered tags. Those keys, I said, they are not house keys. Kyle's voice was guarded. They are for work, gates, panels, equipment. Wolfe's voice cut in. Are any of them numbered 27? Kyle's eyes flicked, too fast, to the smaller ring. That was enough. Kara's voice rose slightly. Kyle exhaled. They are not mine, Wolfe replied. Everything in your pockets is yours for the moment. I held up the brochure. You recommended this service to Kara. You mentioned numbered boxes. Kyle's jaw tightened. It is a common recommendation. Wolfe's voice was dry. Common enough to be printed and carried. Kyle said, I have clients. Wolfe replied, Then you also have motives. Kyle's eyes hardened. I am done being interrogated. Wolfe's voice remained calm. No, Mr. Mercer, you are done pretending to be offended. I could feel the tension in the room thicken. Kara's anger was now focused, which is a dangerous thing in a tidy house. Megan looked frightened, not only of Kyle, but of the way her own obedience had helped create this. I thought again, all right, we have him. We have ink on his glove. We have the brochure. We have a glance toward numbered keys. He will crack, or Kara will call the police, or something will happen that produces the envelope. Then Wolfe said, Archie, examine the umbrella again. I blinked. The umbrella again. Yes, Wolfe said. It has already served as a wall and a corridor. Now it will serve as a record. I went to the entryway, where the umbrella still stood open. The black canopy looked harmless, like any umbrella doing its dull job of being open. Only it was indoors, which kept it guilty. I ran my eyes over the ribs again. No new thread, no obvious snag. I checked the seams and the fabric where it would have brushed coats. Nothing. Then I saw it not as an object, but as a shape, near the center of the canopy. On the inner side, there was a faint rectangular crease. It was subtle, the kind of thing you see only when you tilt the fabric toward light. It looked like a flat object had been pressed against the umbrella, held there long enough to leave an impression, then removed. I called back. "Wolfe, there is a crease." "A rectangle," Wolfe said at once, as if he had expected it. "Describe its size." "About the size of an envelope," I said. "Not a small card, a larger one." Wolfe's voice came through the phone, precise. "Good, that indicates contact, not storage. An umbrella is not a file cabinet. It is a moving surface. If an envelope was pressed against it, it was passed through, held briefly, then moved on." I looked at the crease again. It was faint, but it was there. It told a story without words. I returned to the parlor. Kyle Mercer watched me with that controlled calm again. Darren Holt watched me too, and his sleeve tug returned, fingers worrying the elbow seam as if he could rub the night away. I said, "The umbrella has a crease. An envelope was pressed against the fabric." Megan's eyes widened. "Pressed? Why?" Wolfe answered her. "Because a hand behind the umbrella could take an envelope from one person and pass it to another without being seen. The envelope could be held against the umbrella while the hand adjusted grip, or while the second person took it. It was passed through like a baton." Kara's face tightened. "So it was not kept behind the umbrella, it was moved." "Exactly," Wolfe said. "Your guests believed the umbrella created privacy. In fact, it created a channel." Kyle Mercer's voice was sharper now. "This is ridiculous. You cannot prove any of this." Wolfe replied, "I have no interest in proving it to you. I am interested in the truth, which will exist regardless of your approval." Kyle's eyes flicked again toward the keys on the table. He was watching them the way a man watches a door. Wolfe said, "Mr. Mercer, you have ink on your glove, consistent with handling printed or stamped paper. You possess promotional material for a storage service that issues numbered keys. You attempted to leave. You opened and placed the umbrella in a position that created a blind spot. You conferred with Mr. Holt behind that blind spot, and Miss Price heard paper crinkle at that time. Now tell us, calmly and completely, where the pledge envelope went." Kyle's jaw worked. Darren Holt said quickly, "Kyle did not take anything from Kara. I saw him for 2 seconds. We said hello. That is all," Wolfe replied. "Mr. Holt, you are a useful barometer. When you protest, the room becomes more interesting." Darren flushed. "I am trying to help." "You are trying," Wolfe said. "Too direct." Kara's voice went cold. "Kyle, if you took the pledge envelope, tell me now. If you did not, tell me why you have ink on your gloves." Kyle's calm began to crack at the edges, not into panic, but into irritation. Irritation is sometimes the last refuge of a man who cannot explain himself. He said, "I handled paper." "Yes, I handled paper. There are sign-in sheets, logs, service records. I touched something. Fine. That does not make me a thief." Wolfe's voice stayed steady. "Again you narrow it to theft. That is convenient. Now we widen it. The pledge envelope contains names. Names are power. Power creates leverage." Megan's voice was quiet. "Leverage over donors," Wolfe replied. "Yes, over reputations, over decisions, over boards. A list of promises is a list of vulnerabilities. People do not like their generosity to be managed by someone else." Kara's eyes closed for a moment, then opened. Samanon could threaten to reveal what people pledged or did not pledge. Or, Wolfe said, threaten to falsify it, or to claim influence, or to demand favors. Leverage does not require money. It requires pressure points. I watched Kyle Mercer. His posture had shifted slightly. He was still controlled, but now it was the control of a man holding something back. He was not only defending himself, he was protecting someone else, or protecting the plan. Wolfe said, "Mr. Mercer, you are a contractor. Your business depends on trust. If you were caught stealing, you would lose that trust. Therefore, if you were involved, it would be for a purpose you consider worth the risk." Kyle's eyes hardened. "You talk like you know me," Wolfe replied. "I talk like I know people. There was a pause, and in it I heard the faint hum of Kara's refrigerator from the kitchen, the ordinary sound of a house trying to remain ordinary. Then Wolfe said, "Miss Doyle, ask Charles to bring a glass of water for Mr. Mercer." Kara looked startled. "Water?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "People speak more easily when their mouths are not dry." That was Wolfe at his most maddening, treating a confrontation like a dinner course. Charles went and returned with water. Kyle took it, but he did not drink. Wolfe continued, "Mr. Mercer, if you persist in denial, Miss Doyle will call the police, and you will have no control over what happens next. If you speak now, you may at least choose the manner of your fall." Kyle stared at the phone. His throat worked. He set the glass down untouched. "I did not take the pearls," he said finally. Wolfe replied, "That was not the question." Kyle's voice rose slightly. "I did not take them," Wolfe said. "Very well, then you will tell us who did, or you will tell us how they were passed." Kyle's eyes flicked to Darren Holt, and Darren's face tightened. That flicker was the first honest thing Kyle had done in 10 minutes. Darren Holt spoke too fast. "Do not look at me." Wolfe's voice was mild. "Mr. Holt, if you wish to appear innocent, you should begin by not sounding guilty." Darren flushed, then clamped his mouth shut. Kyle's voice was lower. "You do not understand. This is bigger than a necklace." Wolfe replied, "At last, you may proceed." Kyle drew a breath, then said, "I was asked to keep things safe. That is all." Kara's voice was sharp. "By whom?" Kyle hesitated. Wolfe said, "By someone who benefits from leverage." Kyle's shoulders sagged a fraction. "I was told there might be a problem with sensitive paperwork. The pledge list. I was told it should not sit in a desk. I was told it should be moved." Kara's face went pale. "Moved by you." Kyle's voice was tight. "I did not decide it. I was asked." Megan whispered. "By who?" Kyle looked at the floor for a second, then up. "Bradford Vale." The name landed like a fist in a velvet glove. Vale, the boardman, the smooth donor, the one who wanted discretion as a principle and control as a habit. Kara's voice cracked. "That is impossible. Brad is on the board." Wolfe's voice remained calm. "Board members are often the most eager to control information. Continue, Mr. Mercer," Kyle said. "He said the list should be stored off-site during the event. He said you were distracted. He said Miss Price would not question me because I am security. He said if anything happened, it would be blamed on some guest, and he would handle the aftermath." Kara stared, anger rising. Why would he do that? Kyle's mouth tightened. He did not explain. He said it was for protection. Wolfe's voice was dry. "Protection is another word that often means control," Kyle continued. "He gave me a brochure for a storage place. He said they have private boxes, numbered. He said he already had access." My hand went to my pocket, where the brass key marked 27 had been earlier, now safely back at Wolfe's office. The number felt like it had been stamped on my mind. Wolfe asked, "Did he mention 27? Kyle's mouth tightened. "Yes." Kara made a sound, low and furious. Wolfe said, "And the umbrella." Kyle swallowed. "Vale told me to create a blind spot. He said people would be watching the coat rack. He said an umbrella would make it easy. You did it." Kyle's eyes were hard. "I did, I thought it was. I thought it was a precaution." Wolfe's voice remained even. "Precautions are usually explained. This one required secrecy." Kyle looked away, I said. "The envelope was passed through. Where did it go?" Kyle hesitated, then said, "To Vale." Kara's face twisted. "You handed it to him in my entryway." Kyle's voice was flat. "I did not hand it openly. That was the point. He came in, leaned behind the umbrella, and took it. I did not see his hands. I felt the paper leave my glove." Wolfe's voice was calm. "And the ink on your glove." Kyle's mouth tightened. "The label had fresh ink, the seal too." Wolfe said, "Exactly." Kara stood very still, then said, "And the pearls." Kyle blinked. "I do not know about pearls," Wolfe replied. "Perhaps Perhaps you do not. Perhaps that was another part of the choreography, designed to create noise while the baton moved. Kara's voice was low. So the envelope is not about money, it is about leverage. Wolfe's voice softened slightly, which for him is as close as sympathy gets. Yes, Miss Doyle. Your pledge list is not currency. It is a lever. Someone intends to move people with it. Kyle's eyes snapped to the phone. I told you I am not a thief. Wolfe replied, you are not a thief for profit. You are a thief for leverage. That is worse because leverage is used repeatedly. Kyle flinched, and it was the first time his calm truly broke. Wolfe continued, now, Mr. Mercer, you will remain at Miss Doyle's house. You will not speak to Mr. Vale. You will not warn him if you do. You will ensure your own ruin. Mr. Goodwin will take charge of the next step, I said. Next step is locker 27. Wolfe replied, yes, the lock is waiting. The key is not an ornament, and if Mr. Vale has taken the pledge envelope, he has either stored it, duplicated it, or transferred its contents. All three lead to the same place, the place he believes is secure. Kara's voice was tight. What do we do? Wolfe's voice was firm. We do what we always do. We remove the illusion of safety. Mr. Vale has relied on polite distractions. We will replace them with certainty. I looked at Kyle Mercer, then at Darren Holt. Darren's face had gone pale, and his sleeve tugging had stopped. He sat very still now, the way a man sits when he realizes he has been used, and that the cost may arrive soon. The umbrella stood open in the entryway, like a prop waiting for the next act. It had created a corner without a wall, and now it had revealed that the corner was not meant to hide money. It was meant to move power. And if there is one thing I have learned about New York, it is that people who steal power do not stop with one envelope. They keep going until someone makes them put it down. Wolfe's voice came through the speaker, steady and satisfied in a grim way. Archie, return to the brownstone. We will prepare. Tonight, or very soon, we will invite Mr. Vale to my office. Before that, you will open locker 27. I glanced once more at the crease in the umbrella fabric, that faint rectangle pressed into black cloth. A baton mark. He said, all right. And for the first time since Kara's fundraiser, I felt the case click into a sharper shape. The theft was not about profit, it was about leverage, and leverage always demands a second move. Wolfe intended to prevent it, seated behind his desk, with a roomful of witnesses, and the truth laid out as neatly as one of Fritz's plates. Chapter 7. The real target of the exchange in New York. A person can be ruined by a rumor and rescued by a receipt. And the part that keeps the city humming is that nobody is ever quite sure which one will be required next. That afternoon, I was back in Wolfe's office on West 35th with Kara Doyle and Megan Price, and for once Kara was not wearing the careful hostess expression. She looked tired in a direct way, the way a person looks when she has stopped believing her own walls are solid. Megan looked worse. Assistants are built to keep things from spilling, and when the spill turns out to be arranged, it makes them feel foolish in a way that stings for days. Wolfe, naturally, looked neither tired nor foolish. He sat behind his desk as if the world had been created to be questioned from that chair. The orchid scents drifted faintly down the hall from the plant rooms, and the room itself had the pleasing order Wolfe demands. That order is not decoration, it is a method. I had barely shut the door behind our visitors when Wolfe said, Miss Doyle, you have been withholding something. Kara stiffened. I have not. You have, Wolfe said. Not from me, from yourself. Sit down and speak plainly. Mr. Goodwin, bring me my beer. He wanted a beer because Wolfe believes in comfort during labor, and because he enjoys watching people try to be formal while he is not. I brought it, opened, and set it at his right. Kara took a breath and sat. Megan sat beside her, tablet in her lap, knuckles tight around it. They were both looking at Wolfe as if he might announce a sentence. Wolfe said, the pledge envelope. Kara's jaw tightened. It was sealed. It listed names and promised amounts. Why does it matter? Wolfe asked. Beyond the library's budget. Kara hesitated, and that hesitation told me Wolfe was correct. She glanced at Megan, then at me, then back at Wolfe. Finally she spoke, quietly. "Some donors requested anonymity," Kara said. Wolfe nodded once. "That is common." "It is not common in this way," Kara replied, voice thinner. "Not just do not publish my name. Some of them have personal reasons, jobs, family situations, private stories they do not want attached to public generosity," Megan added, barely above a whisper. One donor asked that the pledge be handled only by Kara. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly, because exposure would cause damage. Kara's fingers tightened on her purse. "Yes, reputations can crack, a job can vanish, a marriage can suffer, a person can be dragged into a conversation they never agreed to have." Wolfe took a sip of beer, set the glass down, and said, "Then the pledge list is not charity, it is pressure." The room went quiet. Kara's eyes closed for a moment, then opened. She looked as if she had swallowed ice. "That is what you think Vale wanted," she said. "It is what anyone would want," Wolfe replied. "Who intends to move other people like furniture. The value is not in the money. The value is in the leverage." Megan's voice shook. "That is horrible." "It is ordinary," Wolfe said. "Only the wrapping is different. People steal wallets for cash. People steal lists for control." I said, "Kyle Mercer already named Vale," he says. Vale took the envelope behind the umbrella. Wolfe's gaze slid to me. "Mr. Mercer claims he transferred the pledge envelope. That is a statement. We will test it." Kara leaned forward. "How?" Wolfe's mouth tightened. "By following the trail of motive. Miss Doyle, did Mr. Vale have any reason to fear your anonymous donors?" Kara blinked. "Fear, number. Then perhaps he did not fear them," Wolfe said. "Perhaps he wanted them, or perhaps the pledge list was not the principal target at all." Megan sat straighter. "What else could be more important?" Wolfe looked at her. "Miss Price, you are young. You imagine only one scheme at a time. People who plot quietly often plot in layers. The pearls were one layer. The umbrella was a tool. The missing envelope may be a tool, or it may be a decoy." Kara's voice tightened. "You think the pledge list was a decoy? I think it may have been," Wolfe said. "Or that its theft was used to conceal another transfer. Mr. Holt is here." I had already telephoned Darren Holt at Wolfe's instruction, and Darren had complied. Not cheerfully, not promptly. But he had arrived, which told me he was still hoping to control damage by cooperating. That hope is the hinge Wolfe likes to push on. Fritz showed Darren in Darren's coat looked as if he had slept in it. The tear at his elbow was still there, and his hand still drifted toward it, as if the fabric were accusing him. "He came in with a smile that tried to be casual and failed, Mr. Wolfe," Darren said. "I feel like I should send the library another donation for the privilege of being interrogated." Wolfe did not invite him to sit immediately. He let Darren stand for 3 seconds, which is just long enough to make a man feel the room is not his. Then Wolfe said, "Sit down, Mr. Holt." Darren sat. His knee began its little nervous bounce. Wolfe looked at him and spoke as if making a small observation about weather. "You arranged the corner." Darren blinked. "What corner?" "The umbrella corner," Wolfe said. "The pocket behind the open umbrella. You did not open the umbrella, perhaps, but you used it. You did not deny it, not once. You denied what it meant." Darren laughed, a short sound that did not reach his eyes. "I denied stealing anything because I did not." Wolfe nodded. "We will not begin with stealing, we will begin with arranging." Darren's smile tightened. "Arranging what?" Wolfe's eyes stayed steady. "A discreet exchange. Tell me why." Darren shifted in his chair, then tried for the safe path. "This is all a misunderstanding. I came to support Kara and the library. I spoke to Kyle because he is security, and I asked where to put a card. That is all." Wolfe's voice was mild. "Mr. Holt, you have already been caught adding details. Nobody asked for. I will not reward you by believing them." Darren's eyes flashed. "You have no proof." Wolfe lifted a hand slightly. "We have the thread from the umbrella rib. We have your torn sleeve." We have Miss Price, hearing paper crinkle. We have Mr. Mercer's ink, smudged gloves. We have your early arrival and your request for something safe. We have your eagerness to reduce the matter to a necklace and an envelope. Proof is not one object. Proof is a structure. Darren's jaw worked. He glanced at Kara, then away. Kara's face had hardened into something colder than anger. It was betrayal that had stopped being surprised. Wolfe said, "Miss Doyle has just informed us that the pledge envelope included donors who demanded anonymity for personal reasons. Therefore, the pledge list is valuable as pressure." "You understand pressure, Mr. Holt," Darren snapped. "Do not tell me what I understand." Wolfe continued as if Darren had not spoken. "You are a man who attends fundraisers, not because you love libraries, but because you love rooms where influence circulates. Influence is a kind of currency. It spends quietly." Darren's laugh came, late this time, and it sounded bitter. "You make me sound like a villain," Wolfe replied. "Number, I make you sound like yourself." Darren stared at Wolfe for a long moment. Then his gaze slid to me. "That is what men do when they are looking for a weaker wall to push against." It did not help him, Wolfe said. "Now we will simplify. Mr. Mercer claims he passed the pledge envelope to Mr. Vale. That may be true, or it may be an attempt to shift blame onto a safe target. Either way, the question remains. What did you intend to pass behind that umbrella?" Darren's mouth opened, then closed. Wolfe waited. He can wait longer than most people can lie. Megan, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. "Mr. Holt, please. Last night I followed a note that looked like Kara wrote it. I did not question it. I did not want to cause a scene. I feel sick about it. If you used that, if you used my obedience, then at least tell the truth." Darren looked at her, startled by the sincerity. The sincerity worked like a pry bar. He exhaled. "All right." Kara's voice was sharp. "All right, what?" Darren's eyes went to his torn sleeve. His fingers tugged it once, then stopped. He looked up. "I wanted a private corner," Darren said, "because I needed Kyle to look at something without the committee seeing it first." Kara went very still. "The committee," Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Continue." Darren swallowed. "The renovation, the library renovation. There are vendor bids, contractors, numbers, choices." Kara's lips parted. "You had the bids." Darren nodded miserably. "A draft list, not final, but enough." Megan's voice was thin. "Why would you have it?" Darren's cheeks reddened. "Because I am on the renovation advisory group," Kara said, cold. "You are not on my advisory group," Darren flinched. "Not officially, but I have been in conversations." Wolfe's voice cut cleanly through it. "Mr. Holt, you acquired a list of vendor bids for the renovation, and you wished Mr. Mercer to review it before a committee meeting in order to influence the outcome." Darren spread his hands, defensive. Influence is a harsh word. I wanted him to look for problems. "Security problems," I said. "Security contractors do not review vendor bids unless someone wants them to bless one and frown at another." Darren glared at me. I wanted a professional opinion. Wolfe's voice was calm. "You wanted a pretext." Darren's jaw tightened. "Fine, I wanted leverage. I wanted to steer the renovation. It is a major contract. People are competing, I thought. I thought I could keep it quiet." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Improper," Darren snapped. "Do not lecture me about improper. This is how things work." Wolfe looked at him. "Number, this is how corruption works. When it is ashamed of itself, you hid it under polite winter music and cocoa and roses. You used an umbrella as a wall for your hands. That is not business. That is concealment." Darren's eyes flashed. "You are calling me corrupt." "I am calling your act corrupt," Wolfe replied. "If you wish, you may identify yourself with it." Kara's voice shook with anger now. "You used my fundraiser to pass bid information behind an umbrella." Darren looked at her, desperate. "Kara, I was trying to help you get the best vendor. By rigging the process," Kara said. "By undermining it before the committee even meets." Megan whispered, "That is why you said safe. It was not about a thank you card. Darren's shoulders slumped. It was not a card. Wolfe's eyes stayed steady. Now, where is that bid list? Darren blinked. What? The list, Wolfe said. The vendor bids. The paper you intended Mr. Mercer to wearview. Where is it now? Darren's mouth tightened. Kyle has it, Wolfe said. Mr. Mercer is not here. Kara's eyes widened. Kyle said he gave Vale the pledge envelope. Wolfe's voice was dry. Perhaps he did, perhaps he did not. But Mr. Holt has just admitted that he arranged a discreet exchange and that the item was not the pledge envelope. Therefore, we must separate these strands. I said, so there were two papers moving in that corner. Wolfe replied, possibly, or one paper described as another. The umbrella made it easy to confuse the witness and even the participant. Mr. Mercer's ink-smudged glove indicates he handled recently printed or stamped paper. Both a pledge envelope and a bid list could have such ink. Kara looked stricken. Then what was taken from my desk? Wolfe's gaze moved to her. Perhaps the pledge envelope, perhaps a copy, perhaps nothing at all, if you have misremembered due to distress. Or perhaps it was taken precisely to ensure you would focus on donors while the renovation was manipulated. That would be clever. Kara's face tightened with fury. My library. Wolfe nodded once. Yes. The library is the stage and also the prize. Renovations are where money becomes private and where choices become favors. That is why the bid list is the real target. Darren spoke quickly, trying again to redirect, to soften. It was only to get a sense of which vendor was reliable. Wolfe's voice sharpened slightly. Then you would have discussed it openly with the committee, not in a blind corner behind an umbrella. Darren's hands clenched on his knees. He looked like a man who wants to argue, but knows argument will only make the hole deeper. Wolfe leaned back, heavy and certain. Mr. Holt, you will do one useful thing today. You will retrieve that bid list and deliver it to me. Darren blinked. I cannot. You can, Wolfe said. If you choose. If you do not, I will ensure that Miss Doyle understands exactly what you attempted, and I will ensure that the proper authorities understand it as well. Your choice will determine whether you are remembered as foolish or criminal. Kara's voice was low and deadly. Where is it, Darren? Darren. Darren swallowed hard. Kyle took it. Where would Kyle take it? I asked. Darren hesitated. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Answer. Darren's voice came out rough. He said he had a place off-site, a lockbox service. He said it was safer than carrying papers around. The number in my head clicked like a latch. 27, I said. Darren's eyes widened slightly, and that told me I was right. Wolfe's voice was calm, satisfied in a cold way. Locker 27. Darren stared at the desk blotter as if it had become dangerous. I did not open it. I do not have the key, Wolfe said. You may not. But someone does, Mr. Mercer, possibly. Mr. Vale, possibly. Or someone else who has been dancing in your corner. Kara's hands clenched. Then the pledge list and the bid list could both be there. Or copies, Wolfe said. Copies are often enough for leverage. Megan's eyes filled with panic again. What do we do? Wolfe's gaze lifted to her. We remove the leverage by retrieving the paper. Then we identify who intended to use it. Then we demonstrate the truth in front of witnesses. Kara's voice was tight. You mean your office gathering? Yes, Wolfe said. That is the only respectable climax in my experience. Darren tried one last time, voice pleading now. Mr. Wolfe, I did not intend to hurt the library. I wanted influence. Wolfe regarded him. Influence acquired by concealment harms everything it touches. You used a fundraiser, a house full of polite distractions, and an umbrella as choreography for a quiet exchange. You are not being judged for wanting influence. You are being judged for the method. Darren's face crumpled into something like shame. It looked unfamiliar on him. Wolfe said, Mr. Goodwin, you will proceed at once to the facility that corresponds to Key 27. You will take appropriate precautions. If you require assistance, you will summon Mr. Panzer. I nodded. And, if the facility refuses. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Then you will discover who has authority there, and you will apply pressure of your own. You are quite capable. Cara Rowe's voice hard. What about Vale? Wolfe looked up at her. Mr. Vale will come to my office tonight, voluntarily or not. If he has used the pledge list for pressure, he will fear exposure. If he has used the bid list for influence, he will fear prosecution. Fear will bring him more reliably than politeness. Cara's eyes burned. I want him in that chair. You may have him, Wolfe said, when the time comes. Megan stood too, pale but steady. I can help. Wolfe nodded once. By being honest from now on. Darren remained seated, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on his torn sleeve, as if the small rip had finally become the size of the trouble he had made. As Cara and Megan moved toward the door, Cara paused and looked back at Wolfe. I thought the worst thing tonight was the pearls, she said. Wolfe's voice was dry. Pearls are jewelry. Bid lists and pledge lists are power. Power is always the real case. They left, Darren did not. Wolfe looked at him for a long moment, then said, almost conversationally, Mr. Holt, you never denied the umbrella. Darren's voice was small. Because it was there. It was more than there, Wolfe said. It was your invention, or at least your acceptance. Remember that. You denied what it meant, because if you admitted its meaning, you would have to admit your intent. Darren swallowed and said nothing. Wolfe reached for his beer, took a sip, and set it down with care. Archie, he said, go. I picked up my coat and hat, already feeling February's teeth waiting outside. As I reached the door, Wolfe added, as if finishing a thought he had been holding since last night's fundraiser, and Archie. Yeah. The integrity of the renovation is the real target. Bring me the bid list. Bring me the truth. Then we will invite everyone who needs to hear it into this room, and let reason do what manners could not. I nodded, and went out. The city hit me with cold air and noise, and for the first time the umbrella felt less like a ridiculous prop, and more like a weapon that had been turned. Somebody had used it to move paper in a blind corner. Now we would use a numbered key to bring that paper into the light. And once the paper was in Wolfe's hands, the polite distractions would not matter at all. Chapter 8. Closing the umbrella. The thing about an umbrella is that it is built to be blamed. If a man slips, he blames the wet. If a lady's hat is ruined, she blames the rain. If a room gets rearranged into a crime scene, people will swear it was only an umbrella, only a careless guest, only a small inconvenience. That is why Wolfe hated it from the first glance. An umbrella is an excuse with ribs. By the time Chapter 8 arrived, we had accumulated enough excuses to fill Cara Doyle's townhouse twice, and Wolfe was done letting them stand open indoors. He had me at the office early because he prefers the day to begin with the parts he controls. The brownstone was warm, orderly, and scented faintly with orchids, which is Wolfe's idea of civilization. Fritz moved through the hall like a benevolent ghost, and the breakfast on the dining room sideboard reminded me again that whatever happens in New York, a properly browned sausage is still possible. Wolfe finished his coffee, then looked at me. Archie, he said, you will now tell me what you found in locker 27. It was a fair request, since I had spent the previous evening doing what Wolfe calls legwork, and what I call wandering into other people's trouble until someone notices. I told him the storage place Sol Panzer had identified was exactly the kind of establishment that sells discretion in tidy units, bright lights, clean floors, polite staff trained not to ask why a man wants a numbered compartment at odd hours. They took the key without comment and walked me to a wall of small steel doors. Locker 27 opened with a soft click that sounded too modest for what it held. Inside was a thick sealed envelope with Cara Doyle's name, and the Library Foundation's letterhead visible through a clear window. There was also a small pouch, velvet, with weight in it. Pearls do not need a label. They announce themselves by how they settle in your hand, so the pledge envelope was real. Mrs. Rusk's necklace was real. The umbrella had not merely staged a trick, it had staged a route. I removed both items, signed a form I did not bother to read, and returned to the brownstone with the kind of satisfaction that lasts until Wolfe asks the next question. Wolfe listened without expression, then nodded once. "As expected," he said. "As expected," I repeated. "You mean, as expected by you?" I was surprised. "You should not be," Wolfe said. The storage locker was a convenient repository. It allows a thief to remove the objects from the scene while retaining access. It also permits the thief to decide later whether to return them, use them, or destroy them. I said, "I vote for return." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "We will return them when we have finished using them." That is Wolfe. "He will return your property, but not before he has used it to extract truth from you." At 11, he made the first clean correction, the kind that prevents harm before it can become public. He picked up the telephone and dictated to me while I wrote, because Wolfe likes his instructions precise and his witnesses plentiful. "Call Miss Doyle," he said. "Tell her to telephone the committee chair of the renovation at once. She will delay all bid decisions until documents are verified. She will not discuss reasons. She will state that irregularities have been discovered in document handling." I called Kara, put Wolfe on speaker, and listened to Kara's tight voice as she complied. I heard her ask for the committee chair, heard her explain in careful words that no decisions would be made until the vendor bids were verified against originals. There was a pause, then a sharper pause, and Kara's voice became firmer. "Yes," she said. "Today immediately." She hung up and exhaled, and I could hear in that exhale that she had just chosen integrity over convenience. "It is not a common choice in committee work," Wolfe said. "Good, that removes the opportunity for quiet corruption to become policy." I said, "Now we do the noisy part." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "There is no need for noise if people behave rationally." "That is your weakness," I told him. "You still expect it." He ignored that and told me to summon our guests. By 2 o'clock Wolfe's office was full in the particular way his office gets full when he intends a conclusion. Kara Doyle and Megan Price arrived first, both dressed as if they had not slept well, but had tried to look like they had. Darren Holt arrived, pale and subdued, the torn sleeve at his elbow now looking less like a snag and more like an emblem. Kyle Mercer arrived last, with that professional calm that had begun to fray. Mrs. Edna Rusk arrived because her pearls were involved, and she arrived with the offended dignity of a woman who believes the universe owes her jewelry. Bradford Vale arrived because Wolfe had invited him, and Vale arrived with the smooth smile of a man who believes an invitation is always safer than a subpoena. Saul Panzer was present because Wolfe likes Saul's quiet eyes. Inspector Kramer arrived because Wolfe had telephoned him with the promise of a neat solution, and because Kramer cannot resist the chance to watch Wolfe be insufferable in person. Fritz brought beer for Wolfe and iced tea for Kara, because Fritz understands that thirst makes people careless. Wolfe let them settle into their places, then folded his hands and began, as if he were about to lecture on proper pruning. "This matter," Wolfe said, "has been disguised as an ordinary theft. It is not ordinary. It is a demonstration of how easily decency can be used as a tool." Mrs. Rusk said sharply, "Are my pearls here?" Wolfe looked at me. I went to the safe, opened it, and produced the velvet pouch. Mrs. Rusk's eyes widened, then hardened again, because gratitude is not her strong suit. "Thank you," she said. As if granting a favor, Wolfe did not respond. "He never feeds vanity, unless it serves logic," Kara said tightly. "And the pledge envelope." I produced the sealed envelope and placed it on Wolfe's desk without opening it. Kara's shoulders loosened slightly. Megan's eyes filled with relief and guilt at once. Wolfe said, "You will note that I have returned both items intact. That does not mean the danger is over." Bradford Vale's smile held. "Mr. Wolfe, this has become melodramatic. The items are recovered. The library can proceed." Wolfe's eyes went to him. "The library can proceed only if its decisions are not poisoned. Miss Doyle has already delayed the bid committee until documents are verified." Vale's smile stiffened. I was not aware. "You are aware now," Wolfe said. "It was necessary." Darren Holt flinched. and I noticed he did not look at Vale directly. He looked at the floor, then at Kara, then away. A man avoids the eyes of the person he has disappointed. He also avoids the eyes of the person he has served. Mr. Holt has admitted to arranging a discreet exchange behind an open umbrella at Miss Doyle's fundraiser. He intended to pass a list of vendor bids for the library renovation to Mr. Mercer for review before the committee meeting. Darren's voice was hoarse. I did. Kara's eyes burned, but she stayed silent. Wolfe had told her he preferred clean correction to dramatic punishment, and she was trying to learn it. Wolfe's gaze shifted to Kyle Mercer. Mr. Mercer, you confessed to opening the umbrella. You also displayed fresh ink smudges on your gloves consistent with handling recently. Printed or stamped paper. You claimed it was from a pen leak. Your pen was clean. Kyle's jaw tightened. I handled paper. Yes, Wolfe said. And you handled it in a manner consistent with transferring it. Vale said, calmly. This is all very interesting, but it is still circumstantial. Wolfe turned his eyes to Vale, as if Vale had been a minor distraction. Circumstantial evidence is evidence, but if you prefer a confession, you may watch one. Kyle Mercer's head snapped toward Wolfe. I did not agree to that. You have already agreed to far worse, Wolfe said. Now you will speak, because your plan has failed. Kyle stared, then looked at Kara, then at Kramer. The presence of the inspector was doing what Wolfe intended. It narrowed Kyle's options, Wolfe said. Mr. Mercer, you passed the bid list to someone else. Kyle's mouth tightened. Wolfe's eyes remained steady. Yes, you did not keep it. The umbrella was not a cabinet, it was a corridor. The bid list was passed through, like a baton, and then removed from the building to prevent retrieval. Kyle's calm cracked a fraction. You cannot know that, Wolfe said. I know it because the storage locker contained the pledge envelope and the pearls. That means those items were moved to a controlled location. The bid list was not in that locker, therefore it was moved elsewhere. The simplest method is to give it to a person who can leave, without suspicion, a subcontractor, someone who appears briefly, waits outside, receives a folded packet, and disappears. Kyle's throat worked. His eyes flicked toward the window, then back. Wolfe said, You have just looked toward the street. That is not a denial. That is a memory. Kramer grunted. Mercer, you want to tell me something before I drag it out of you. Kyle's jaw tightened. He looked at Kara, and for a moment, his expression was something like regret. I was hired for safety, Kyle said. That is how it started, Wolfe said. And it became secrets. Kyle exhaled. Yes, I passed it. Kara's voice was low. To whom? Kyle hesitated. Wolfe's voice was calm, relentless. To a subcontractor waiting outside. Kyle nodded once, sharply, like a man forcing himself to swallow a bitter pill. He was in the alley by the service door. He does occasional work for me, cameras, wiring. I texted him. I told him to wait. When the bid list came to me, I folded it and took it out back. I gave it to him. Darren Holt made a small sound, almost a sob, then clenched his jaw. He looked as if the full shape of what he had started was now visible, and it frightened him. Wolfe said, Thank you, that is useful, Archie. Yeah, go, Wolfe said. Inspector, accompany him if you wish. Saul Panzer will also go. Mr. Mercer will telephone the superintendent of Miss Doyle's building and instruct him to assist. You will intercept the subcontractor and recover the papers intact. Kyle's head snapped up. He may be gone. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Then you should have chosen better associates. Kramer stood, heavy and irritated. Goodwin, let's move. Saul Panzer rose without comment, already halfway out the door in his mind. Saul moves like a shadow. Shadows are useful in alleys. Kyle Mercer made the call under Wolfe's stare. I could hear the superintendent's voice, suspicious and annoyed, then turning wary when he heard polis and contractor and alley. By the time Kyle finished, we were already moving. The ride downtown was fast and unpleasant, because Kramer drives conversation like he drives an interrogation. With no patience for comfort, Saul sat beside me, silent, eyes alert. We reached Kara's building, went through the service entrance, and found the superintendent waiting with a ring of keys and a look that said he disliked surprises more than he disliked police. "He is out there," the superintendent said, jerking his head toward the back door. "A guy in a dark cap been hanging around." Kramer grunted. "Let's go." The alley smelled like winter and trash and the city's honest underside. The light was gray. A man stood near the far end, half turned away, pretending to look at his phone. Dark cap, work jacket, hands in pockets. He was trying to look like he belonged there, which is what men do when they do not. Kramer said, "Hey." The man glanced up, saw Kramer's badge, and did the reflexive calculation every man does when he is caught: run, argue, or pretend. He chose run. He made it 3 steps before Saul Panzer was behind him, not grabbing, not tackling, simply placing himself in the exact path. The man stopped as if he had hit a wall. I stepped in and said, "Easy, we just want what you were handed." He blinked rapidly. "I do not know what you mean." Kramer moved closer. "You want to try that again?" The man swallowed, eyes darting. "Kyle asked me to hold something, that is all." "Hold where?" I asked. He hesitated. The hesitation was the whole answer. "Your pocket," I said. He swallowed, then slowly reached into his jacket and produced a folded packet of papers. The folds were tight, the way a man folds documents when he intends to conceal them. The top page showed the edge of a printed table, lines and numbers, vendor bids. I took the packet carefully, as if it might be the last decent thing in the alley. I looked at the superintendent. "You saw him here," I said. The superintendent nodded, eyes wide. "Yes," Kramer said. "You are a witness. Remember that." The man in the cap looked miserable now, miserable and relieved. People who do small, dishonest jobs often fear only being caught with the paper in hand. Once it is gone, they feel lighter, as if guilt is transferable, Saul said quietly. Now, we returned to the brownstone with the bid list intact, and I felt the satisfying weight of it in my coat, as if it were a brick. Wolfe likes bricks. They build walls that do not move. Back in Wolfe's office, the room was waiting. Kara and Megan sat rigidly. Darren sat pale and quiet. Kyle Mercer stood with his shoulders squared, as if bracing for impact. Bradford Vale sat with his smooth expression slightly strained. Mrs. Rusk looked bored because her pearls had been returned, and boredom is her default when she is not offended. Kramer entered behind me with the air of a man bringing unpleasant news to someone who deserves it. I placed the folded papers on Wolfe's desk. Wolfe did not touch them immediately. He let everyone see them. Then he spoke. "You see," Wolfe said, "how polite corruption works. It does not shout, it whispers. It does not steal for profit, it steals for leverage." Vale said carefully, "Mr. Wolfe, I object to being included in this." Wolfe turned his eyes to him. "Do you?" Vale's smile attempted to recover. "I am a board member. I have advocated for discretion in handling donor information. That is prudent. It is not criminal." Wolfe's voice remained calm. "Prudence is not the issue. Control is." He gestured slightly toward the pledge envelope. The pledge list contained names of donors who demanded anonymity for personal reasons. That list is pressure. Someone who possesses it can threaten exposure, threaten embarrassment, threaten harm. Kara's jaw tightened. Megan stared at the envelope as if it had become venomous. Wolfe continued. The pledge envelope and Mrs. Rusk's pearls were placed in locker 27. The key was concealed in the umbrella. The umbrella was delivered to Miss Doyle's house under false initials to ensure it would be positioned correctly. That created a blind corridor for exchanges. He looked at Darren Holt. Mr. Holt used the corridor to attempt influence over vendor bids. Mr. Mercer exploited the corridor to move that bid list out of the building. The pledge envelope and pearls were moved to a locker to be used later. He turned his eyes to Vale. Mr. Vale is the only person here whose power increases if the pledge list becomes a weapon. Vale's eyes narrowed. This is assumption. Wolfe's voice was dry. It is reasoning. He nodded to Saul Panzer. Saul produced a small envelope and handed it to Wolfe. Wolfe did not open it. He merely indicated it with a finger. Mr. Panzer, Wolfe said, obtained a record of access for Locker 27. Vale's smile tightened. Those records are private. Wolfe looked at him. Not when the police request them. Inspector Kramer has been cooperative. Kramer grunted. I can be cooperative. I can also be the opposite. Wolfe continued. The locker was accessed twice. Once to deposit the envelope and pearls. Once to check that they remained. The second access occurred this morning before Mr. Goodwin arrived. The person who accessed it used a duplicate key held by the facility, which is issued only when the registered renter proves identity. Wolfe's eyes fixed on Vale. The renter name was Bradford Vale. The room went still, the way rooms do when money stops being protective. Kara inhaled sharply. Megan's face went pale. Darren looked as if he might vomit, then steadied himself by gripping his chair. Vale's voice was controlled. I rent a locker for documents. That is not a crime. No, Wolfe said, but placing stolen property and stolen donor information into that locker is. Vale's eyes flashed. You cannot prove I placed them there. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Mr. Mercer has already demonstrated a willingness to handle papers for you. He also carried a brochure for the storage service. He created the blind corridor with the umbrella, which requires knowledge of sight lines. He is a security contractor. He is your kind of man, Mr. Vale. Useful, discreet, and expensive. Kyle Mercer spoke. Flat. He did not pay me. Wolfe's eyes moved to Kyle. Then he promised you something else, or threatened you. Leverage works on employees as well as donors. Kyle's jaw tightened. He looked at Kara, then away. He did not deny it. Wolfe turned back to Vale. You arranged for the pledge envelope to leave Miss Doyle's study. You arranged for it to be stored where you could access it later. You arranged for a distraction, the pearls, because a room will panic over jewelry and forget paper. You arranged the umbrella because polite people will not close it and therefore will not see what hands do behind it. Vale's smoothness began to crack, not into panic, but into anger. You are inventing motives. Wolfe's voice sharpened slightly. Number, I am identifying them. You wanted the pledge list because it contains private names and private amounts. You wanted it because it gives you pressure over donors and therefore influence over the board and the renovation. Mr. Holt wanted influence over vendor bids and thought he could use Mr. Mercer as a tool. Mr. Mercer chose to be a tool for more than one man. That is why his gloves had ink and his feet pointed toward exits. Darren Holt's voice came out thin. I did not know about the pledge list. Wolfe looked at him. I believe you. Your corruption was narrow and timid. Mr. Vale's was broader and more confident. Kara's voice was low, fierce. Brad, why? Vale held her gaze for a moment. He looked like a man considering whether charm still has value in a room full of facts. Then he said quietly, because donors are careless, because committees are sloppy, because projects drift, someone has to steer. Wolfe nodded once. And you chose to steer with pressure rather than competence. Vale's eyes hardened. I chose to steer with what works, Kramer said. That is enough. Vale, you are coming with me. Vale's jaw tightened. This is outrageous, Kramer grunted. Save it for the desk sergeant. As Kramer moved toward him, Kara spoke, voice steady now, the steadiness of someone who has decided what she will not tolerate. Before you go, Kara said to Darren Holt, you will withdraw from the renovation committee. Darren flinched. His face was pale. He looked at Kara, then at Wolfe, then down. I will, he said. I will withdraw quietly. Kara nodded once. Quietly is fine. I do not want a scandal. I want the library protected. Wolfe regarded her with mild approval. Clean correction, he said. Prevented harm. That is preferable to theatrical punishment. Mrs. Rusk sniffed. I would not mind theatrical punishment. No one asked you, Kramer said. And that was the closest the inspector has ever come to wit. Kramer took Vale out. Saul followed to ensure nothing went missing on the way out, because Saul enjoys that kind of symmetry. When the door closed, the room exhaled. Kara stood. Her face was tired, but her eyes were clear now. She looked at Wolfe. You were right, she said. It was never just a guest. Wolfe's voice was mild. It was a mechanism, and mechanisms are always placed. Kara nodded once, then turned toward the umbrella, which I had brought back into the office as evidence, and which now leaned shut in the corner like a scolded object. She walked to it and put her hands on the handle. For a moment, she hesitated, and I could see in that hesitation the whole night of cocoa and roses and polite movement. The moment she had laughed nervously at a thing that made no sense. The moment she had chosen not to make a scene. Then she closed it herself, hands steady, as if she were closing not fabric and ribs but an opportunity. The snap was small. Final, she moved it to the corner, not carefully now but decisively, like an object that has lost its power. Megan watched her, eyes bright. Darren Holt sat very still, pale and quiet, and for once he did not tug at his sleeve. Wolfe leaned back behind his desk, satisfied in the only way he allows himself to be satisfied, not with drama, but with order restored. Miss Doyle, he said, your library will survive. It will survive because you have chosen verification over velocity. Kara nodded. Thank you. Wolfe's mouth tightened slightly. You may thank me by never permitting an open umbrella indoors again. I said, that might be the moral of the whole thing. Wolfe glanced at me. The moral, Archie, is that polite distractions are dangerous. They allow people to commit acts they would never commit in full light. Kara looked at the closed umbrella in the corner, then back at Wolfe. And the corner, she said. Wolfe nodded. Yes. Someone built a corner without building a wall. You have now removed it. When Kara and Megan had gone, and the brownstone returned to its normal calm, I stood by Wolfe's desk and looked at the sealed pledge envelope. It lay there like a sleeping threat. You going to open it? I asked. No, Wolfe said. It is not mine. Then how do we know Vale did not copy it? I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. We do not. That is why Miss Doyle will notify her anonymous donors discreetly that their information may have been compromised. It is unpleasant, but it is honest. Honesty is a disinfectant. It does not erase what happened, but it prevents infection. I nodded. That was Wolfe, refusing dramatic punishment, preferring clean correction and prevented harm. Fritz appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by the smell of conclusion. Mr. Wolfe, dinner will be served at 7. Wolfe's expression softened a fraction, which is his version of happiness. Excellent. As Fritz withdrew, Wolfe looked at the closed umbrella in the corner and then at me. Archie, he said, dispose of it. Dispose, I said. You mean throw it out? Yes, Wolfe said. It has served its purpose. I will not have it in my house. I picked it up by the handle. It felt lighter now, stripped of its tricks. At the door I paused and looked back. Wolfe was already reaching for his book, the case filed away in his mind as neatly as any entry in his records. The orchids waited upstairs. The brownstone held its quiet. Outside, the city kept moving, full of corners people build without walls. I stepped into the February air, and for once I was glad the sky was clear.